Well, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically Nooksack and Lummi tribes, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. On behalf of everyone here, we want to express our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Nooksack and Lummi tribes, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Next is the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda as written? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Motion to approve the agenda as written. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good of the order. So this is a chance for you, Phil.
Okay, if Tammy would bring up the screen, you may have seen some of these things already, but I have to thank Bridget for singing it to me. Bridget, thank you very much. You get credit for this. But these are all the things that are happening in the schools, and I'm just going to go through them and make a couple of comments here. First one is the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association. So we're going to have salmon in the schools again. So
Okay.
they're gonna release them, which is always cool. So when you're out and about in schools and you start seeing those aquariums out there, take a look at those. This next one I mentioned in the update, what comics in the magazine. This is really cool. So I'm gonna pass this around and you can look at it. It's got the names of the kids in there, but the kids are making comments and comics, and it's through the Whatcom Library Association, and then they make a magazine out of it. It's really cool. And so I talked to the staff person that does that, but take a look at those kids can do it. I mean, really talented. The weed assessments, Matt, can you make that a little bit bigger? Oh, she is. Those are mandated assessments, multilingual learners are ELLs, professional development days. Tomorrow, and I give you a little bit of update on what students are doing. I mean, there's some really cool stuff going on, and I've been really impressed with what I'm seeing in the schools and in the classrooms. But these professional development days, you know, that focus on writing. I love that piece with wit and wisdom. The junior high working with the, you know, looking for this. There it is. There it is. With their Native American group. I'm trying to find it. There it is. But what really, the chat GPT and the Magic School AI stuff, that is really cool stuff. And I didn't know, I knew about chat. I don't know if you did or not, but this other piece with the Magic School helps. It's another piece of their tool in their toolbox for teachers. Differentiating lessons, helping them design lessons, differentiating their instruction, helping with multilingual and special ed students, lesson planning. I mean, it's one of these things where you can really dive into it and add to the repertoire of what you're doing in your classroom with your kids. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. So I might stop by and see what they're doing tomorrow with that. And then looking at what's happening with counselors and the high school staff, I talked about that, the ILC teachers, special ed programs, and around their specially designed instruction and what they're. I mean, this is the good of the order. This is the work that we want to see our teachers doing in their classrooms. We want our principals to be instructional leaders. We want our teachers that are closest to it. That's where we're going to see major academic achievement levels happen. And the more we can help train and sustain what teachers know and are able to do, the students can do the same thing. So I want to thank Bridget for pushing this out there and organizing a lot of that. And hopefully I'll try to get out and see some of this tomorrow. So anyway, I think that's good news and good of the order.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren.
Next up is the consent agenda. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is information from the audience. Tammy, do we have anyone signed up? So we have Jen.
Yep, I already know it's me, so. Oh, I did not mean to throw it. I'm really sorry about that. That was not meant to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm Jen Esplin. I'm a parent of a Harmony child and a concerned voter. First off, I'm here to thank you in continuation of the fact that we are still in January and it is the School Board Appreciation Month. Thank you for your time and all of your dedication. I really do appreciate it as much as you probably don't feel it when I talk. Second thing is really good news. The top thing there, voters pamphlet went out yesterday. It is live on Whatcom's website. There is the documents there. There is only a for statement. There is no against statement. So the both of them are there. So you can have a copy of that. The next thing is the not so fun stuff. So in November, we had all those concerned voters and parents coming to meetings. And we heard over and over again, lots of concerns and problems. And some words that we heard is that we needed some confidence, we needed some transparency, and we needed some honesty. Okay, so if we go through the packet of paper here, first thing we have is an email that went out November 29th, and it has an attachment, and it says that there is a goal to report findings at a board meeting. Okay, highlighted that for you. And then again, we got another email that went out district-wide, December 7th, talking about that being at that board meeting. And then we had another email that went out and just kind of talked on it. It didn't actually go into any deliberation, but it talked about the group working. You go on the board website and you go into finances. You can go into the fact-finding group and you get a really old document that isn't even up to date that says you're going to talk about stuff at the 12/14. And then at the bottom, it even says you have another meeting and you have no notes from that meeting. What are we giving our voters? They all showed up. They told you they needed something. They needed transparency. They needed honesty. They asked you for something. You stood up and you told us you were going to give us a fact-finding group. And then you told us you were going to give us something. And what have you given us? I understand there is some information that is not able to share, but you have to give us honesty and tell us what's going on. If you can't provide it, then don't say you can provide it. It's really, I want this levy to pass. I'm doing the work. I'm here. But you have to do the work too, or be honest that we can't do the work. We can't continue to not provide what we're saying we're going to provide. And I have the board meeting minutes from the 14th. Yes, I was here, but I still went and printed them. And all it says is gathering information. There's no report. There's no data. There's nothing. Help me, help you get this levy to pass. Because the budget we're going to show later and all that, it's garbage if we don't pass the EP&O levy. I can't imagine what we're going to do if we don't have that money coming in. Please, please. It's the one thing. And it's the same thing. I've come there 3 times asking for this. And I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep showing up. I'll go away and go back to doing my other stuff, like coaching and PTO and all those other things. But until then, I'm gonna be the squeaky wheel. I'm gonna send you all emails like you got last night. Shouldn't be a surprise that I'm sitting here. Please.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else would like to provide comments from the board?
We had a list, right?
You don't have to be on the list. We just take the list first. But
I do.
Okay.
Mr. Brockman, my name is Teresa Sigatowitz.
Hi, Teresa. Nice to
I
meet you.
understand we have a mutual friend and, or mutual acquaintance, and Lisa and Peter Janicki. They're very good friends of my family for generations.
Very nice people.
Yeah. I have a question. I got a voter deal in the mail today. I had, did I miss any voter outreach? Did you mail any outreach? Did you open out to the community about what was going on with the levy, where the money was going? The current board is having to assume the reputation of the previous board with lack of transparency, lack of involvement in the community, and a really distrustful reputation. I'm sorry, that is what you have inherited. There is, Mr. Brockman, there is a major distrust in the community. As a former candidate for a school board, I have been getting multiple phone calls from people. Do I know where the money's going? Do I know what's going on? Do I have a copy of the budget? No. Did you ask for one? Yes. Were you denied? Yes. Also, the fact that they said, where was the community outreach in putting up the levy? I says, there was none. So also on that, that's one part of what I want to talk about. Second part is about drugs in this school. 2 of you or 3 of you have no idea of my extensive outreach to the law enforcement community at the local, state, and federal level. And I did some investigating this summer and outreach into drugs in Mount Baker School District. We have an extensive drug problem in this school, extensive, and it is rampant. We have a 4th grader in grade school that has a very successful drug sale program, business. Absolutely, and I've got that from students. We have students in all levels of the school that are selling drugs, have a drug supply business. We have staff that has a drug supply business. We have an open access to drugs in this school. I say that to your, including fentanyl. If there is a fentanyl overdose in this school and the school board, as duly notified by me talking about this, has not done anything, you as a board and individuals are responsible, can be sued for that fentanyl death for that student if so decreed by the parent. I have done my research on that. There is federal programs that have done that where the school board has been sued for lack of looking for drug curtailment. It is all levels of drugs, from fentanyl to marijuana to heroin to anything you want is totally accessible. And I've got that from at least 10 high school students and probably half a dozen junior high students. So I'm not just blowing steam. I don't blow steam. I got more things to do with my time. My advice is to you is to work with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office to bring the dogs in. The dogs have not been in this school district for over 5.5 years. They have been asked, but the leadership of the school district has been asked every 6 months, would you like to bring the dogs in? They have been denied. We are only 2 schools in this county that have not allowed dogs in their school to do a drug survey. And when you bring dogs in, no offense, Tammy, but anything that goes on in the school, I think the air has ears of what's going on. There is no privacy about what's gonna happen. So we need to let the deputy sheriffs and the drug task force or the SWAT team or whatever decide when they're gonna bring the dogs in. So I think the fact that you, one of the goals that you're given is for the safety of the students. This has to do with the safety and the security of the students about drugs in this school. It's getting really bad, really more, it's rampant. And it's, I would like to close the campus, all of them, grade schools, everything, close them. And have an ongoing situation where you bring the dogs in not one time, but multiple times. So the fact that the dealers know not to bring drugs into the school because they will be found. And the fact that if we do have drugs found in the school, that the school board lead the way to actively prosecute those fines, those people, and actively work at it. So, and not have a zero tolerance on drugs. And again, I'm sorry, Mr. Brockman, but it is staff that's dealing too. So that needs to be across the board. And again, I look forward to bringing a hearing that you brought the dogs in, because that's the only way that we're gonna stop or make a dent into drugs. Because I don't want to go to any more funerals for children that died of fentanyl. I don't want to do that anymore. And I've gone to enough in this county already. So that is what I wanted to bring up. You need to go and also get some information about the levy. You got 2 weeks before the election is over with. That's time to put out a flyer. I'm not a parent. I get nothing from kids. And I represent a large majority of the people that are voting for this. This is the only flyer? Where's the breakdown? Where's the trial balances? Where's the line items? That's what people are looking for, not this. This is nothing. We're looking for line items. So, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa.
And nothing makes me angrier than children that are put at risk and open to, I'm also involved with child trafficking. And I think that we should lead the way in this county to stop child trafficking and stop drugs in the schools, because I was appalled at the level of drugs in the school, appalled. And I think it should be, again, not at your discretion when we bring the dogs in. No offense to you, but as you know, every wall has ears. It should be left up to the police department to bring the dogs in. And we are the only school in 5.5 years that they've not been allowed to bring the dogs into schools. There's only 2 schools in Whatcom County that they have not been allowed to bring the dogs in. And Mount Baker was one of them for over 5.5 years. So the sheriff's department has tried to bring the dogs in, but they were denied by leadership at the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is anyone else from the audience? Next up is information from board. I'll start with you, Danielle.
I have nothing to report this week.
Ed?
Well, last week, under our consent agenda, there was a scholarship for Joe Straka.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, he was my neighbor. He passed away, and got to know him a little bit over the years. My wife and I would stop in and see him. And really enjoyed listening to his, all the jobs he had over the years, bringing power lines down our road, South Pass Road. Worked on the limestone quarry up there on Red Mountain. Just lived in a really beautiful spot. And yeah, I really enjoyed getting to know him, and I'll miss him. So I thought that was cool that there was a scholarship in his name. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Anything else, Ed?
Not really. I just, I feel like, you know, we're in a tough spot, and things are getting better. And, we've got an opportunity right now to hit the reset button in a lot of different areas and come together and rally around our strategic plan and our mission statement and start to make some progress in that direction. So I think that's the silver lining in everything that's going on right now.
Brenna?
Well, I last weekend my daughter was who's a Baker graduate. She was in a play or a musical in town. They did Mean Girls with her production company she's been working with. And there was a lot of Baker graduates that were involved in that. And so it was really nice to see all those kids continuing with their community that they build in drama. And it's going strong, and they did a great job. And I look forward to going to the musical here next weekend. So that should be fun.
Jason?
Just quick, just with the weather we had no school, but the facility people did a great job. We had a basketball game here Saturday, and it was started pretty early, and we came down Friday night to get the concession stand stuff ready, and it was really nice and good that they had that really better than the roads at that time of the day. So that was good. So just thank them for that.
Oh, thank you. So I've had a few issues on this coming weekend. Bill and I will be at the WASDA legislative conference in Olympia. We'll get a chance to speak with our local legislators, as well as attend sessions with the budget writing committees in both the House and the Senate. So I think that's always a very valuable time. A couple of the big, there's a whole list of bills proposed, and most of them don't make it, but a couple of the major areas of focus that I'm at least cautiously hopeful that we might see some additional movement is building on last year's improvements to special ed funding. There's a bill to increase the special ed cap to 17.25%. And there's some other special ed related bills that would probably have less chance of going through, but would be even better for us. So we'll definitely working with WASDA, getting the best that we can there on special ed funding. Also on student transportation, similar type of thing. Continue to, one thing that's been nice with that hybrid hearings in the legislature, I've been able to sign on pro or con on bills, and do that from my chair at home. And so you can get your support in, so that's been really great, because it saves an awful lot of time driving back and forth to Olympia. I spoke to Whatcom County Council this Tuesday, follow up on the letter that we approved at our last meeting. I must say I was disappointed the main thing I was trying to convince them of was the value of including the orphan lands around the Climate Commitment Act parcels in the appraisals for replacement lands. And I think that could very well, if that gets included, I'm still thinking we can work with the DNR and try to continue to make our case. But if that gets included, we could easily end up with an extra 1,000 acres of state forest land that we wouldn't have otherwise. And that gets folded into the to the sustainable harvest calculation. Even if the trees are currently 20 or 30 years old and not being harvested, that increases the annual harvest overall because there's more being grown overall. So so keep hammering away at that, working it from the DNR side next. I was disappointed because I thought I would be successful. You know, if sometimes you just tell them stuff because you think they need to hear it, but this one it was harder for me to take because I really thought they would see the sense in it. The Forest Advisory Committee adopted the language that we had written in our letter in their draft to the council. The council didn't include that language. So anyway, financial fact-finding work group. I appreciate Jen's comments. We are still intending to add more things to the financial tab on the website. The members, we're not meeting in person anymore. The members are wrapping up the work group work by email, and we intend to continue to add things. But we had our last meeting. I think it was January 8th, I believe, and our last in-person meeting, and we decided rather than continue with program analysis to turn the next stage over to the budget, to the district budget committee, which we would, I think the school board will expect the admin team to come up with a recommendation for the makeup of the budget committee. So something we should be looking for quite fairly soon. I did send an all staff letter, and I think I sent a copy of that to you by email. The key items, I'm pleased to have Phil on board here. I think it made a really great start here. And personally, I was just looking through my send file and my district email, and I think there was a period in the middle of December where I sent 20 emails in the span of 2 or 3 days. And if I look back, the last 2 or 3 days, it's 1 or 2 emails a day. So just my own workload has diminished having your leadership here, and I appreciate that personally. And then I also really want to appreciate Nick's work on the transition. It kind of fell on our lap, and Nick stepped up and took care of everything. And that was, it was a hard place to be in, and I think you handled it so well that I think it made that transition actually work. I was able to attend a little bit of a district admin team with Phil and the rest of the core administrators, and I can see that we're off to a good start in our team working together well. So that was very heartening for me to see too. Support dog evaluation Saturday, 9 a.m. in the 800 building gym. If you want to see our support dog our school support dog program in action. You can go there and they may come and visit us at possibly our next school board meeting. So I said, if you want to come, you're welcome to do your 3-minute presentation each. The dogs can probably have 3 minutes each, as far as I'm concerned. And so they're always welcome at the school board meeting. I think it's nice for us to see that too. The ballots are out on the levee. I was able to hear the clink of the metal when I dropped my ballot in today, so in Acme, so they are taking those. And that's all I had. So presentation next up is Ron with the athletics program. Thanks so much for coming, by the way, Ron.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate that.
I'm kind of old school, so I made some copies for you guys, so.
Thank you.
Yep. So we see up on the screen there is just a kind of a outline of our athletic department right now. Last time, it's been probably 4 or 5 years since we've had one for the school board. So we talked to Mr. Fox about, it'd be good to maybe get everybody kind of caught up on where we're at. So no particular order, but if we take a look at the document there, we have listed here, the first are the programs we list that we offer here at Mount Baker High School. As you notice, it's balanced as far as the same amount for male and female. So Title IX wise, it's good. Cross country is a co-ed sport. So that means that they all practice together, work together, same as track. And then everything else is separate. They have different head coaches, different practice times and stuff. The one will be different is wrestling started on Monday. We practice late together, boys and girls, because the junior high season 3 begins and that's wrestling. So they need the room because those kids need to take the late bus. And so the high school kids practice after they're done. And it's practice another sports do baseball or baseball and softball do that when we have to share the field house, and then basketball does it with the guys and girls, trading off practice times. But right now you'll hear the girls practice most, probably 95% of the time after school because the head basketball coach is a teacher at Acme, and so it works better for them to go later. And then at the junior high, we offer 7 sports on both sides. The only thing that you don't see up there is the 2 you don't see is Wasset and cheer. Those are the ones we don't offer at the junior high.
What is Wasset?
Okay, Wasset is the Washington State horse and equestrian team.
Oh.
So we have athletes that participate in that. They actually have a competition this weekend, and so we have to do that. And then if there's sports that we don't offer at our school, we have some students who will participate at another school. We have a couple of students who are doing swimming and dive at Squalicum, I believe, is where they're at. We had a tennis, someone wanted to play tennis, they'd have to go to another school that offers that. Okay. I was asked earlier, as we're going here about where we're looking to add more. Right now, it's tough just because, I know some schools have some stuff that we just, budget concerns, and then obviously our enrollment wise, it's just hard to put a stress on that. Like one of the things out there is slow pitch softball is done in the fall, but we already have 3 sports that we offer for girls, and then adding something else might take away from there. Might provide for some other students, but we just haven't kind of got there yet. If that's going to happen, there's some other things in the county. Like we don't, like I said, we don't have tennis, we don't have swim and dive. A couple of schools do bowling. They combine with their schools. That's something else we're talking about. But right now we're in pretty good shape on Title IX wise. So those are programs that we offer at both the junior high and high school. The one difference is the junior high has a 4-sport season. So today just ended their season 2, which was the boys basketball. Girls were finished before the break. We were asked by the official association to split up the girls and boys so there were so many games all together trying to get officials. And so that's why that's been split up. So in the season 3, which begins on Monday, will be wrestling and volleyball. And then they'll go for their season, and then the final season is track, girls soccer for junior high, baseball are the 3 sports that go on during that time. Okay. And then we're getting close to the end of our 2nd season in high school with postseason coming up for basketball and wrestling. Okay. Participation rates, if you look at that next bullet point there, over 50% of our athletes compete, or our students compete in athletics. These numbers are a little bit skewed from the standpoint that I didn't have the time to go through and hand do everybody, but we have 202, as you look on the sheet there, 202 boys are playing sports at the high school level. We have a total of 250 boys in the school right at this, approximately at this time. Now, some of these guys do more than one sport. So that's why those numbers are skewed a little bit, because it'd be obviously be higher than 50%, but we know that same with the girls. What I like about that number is it's very close, not much of a difference there and doing that. And then the next one is for junior high, and a little lower numbers, but we got a little less students there. And so again, we have 81 boys currently that we have track are participating in sports, 57 girls, and you can see so it's a little bit different with bigger in the boy area on the junior high, but also there's 60 more or 50 more kids that way. So one of the comments I want to make down here is the numbers are increasing, but we're still below pre-COVID numbers. Went back and Mickey was able to pull up a document she had before that. We had, if we do the same kind of numbers here, we had like 600 students doing sports before COVID total.
That's high school and
High
junior
school,
high.
that's this is just in the high school.
Just the high school.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously our numbers are down a little bit, but they're better than what they were a couple years ago, but we're still feeling those effects a little bit. And there's probably some other reasons why, but we won't go into that today. So I don't get that participation, but some sports do better than others. And to be honest with you, some of the numbers are lower in some sports because they haven't had some of the success on the, with wins and losses, and some kids don't want to participate in that stuff. If they're not doing as well, that's just the struggle that we have. This is the first year where we did not have a C team basketball team at the high school level. We just didn't have enough kids to get out there to make it viable. We we started off with one, but then due to grades or some other issues, they were no longer part of the team, so we had to drop that. Which is the first time since I've been here where we've haven't had a C team in boys basketball. Okay. Moving on next to budget and funding. One of the things that junior high have been collecting money for ASB cards, because you have to have an ASB card to participate in sports. And so, and that money, goes into the ASB account, and we didn't realize that there was actually quite a bit of money there. And so, anything that was needed by the junior high, if it was still usable from the high school, it'd kind of get passed down, or I had to take care of that out of my district athletic fund. And so this year we've been able to use more of that ASB money for the junior, and then the junior high sports never had a budget, or haven't had a budget for a long time. So we were able to I was able to put a budget together based on money. So at least they had some stuff they needed to get instead of coming to me all the time and say, hey, we need to be at this or this. Now they'll have a budget based on that recurring, bringing that money to do that.
So the ASB card is something that students purchase to attend athletic events?
Well, it pays, the idea behind it is that for help with our overall programs, but it allows you to go to home events free, you get a discount on the road, but it also helps to support our own programs. And it's one of the ways we used to have, before COVID, we had pay to play. So kids not only had to buy an ASB card, but they always had to pay a fee to help offset the cost of athletics. And then we got rid of that at COVID and did not bring it back, which is a big win.
Right.
Okay.
And that was a board choice. We discussed it and decided that we wouldn't charge pay to play.
So what we ended up doing was I suggested that if we drop the pay to play, but we increased the ASB card a little bit. So I think it went from $35 to $45 is what they pay for that, and that covers all those sports there. And then kids that financially have some issues, then we take care of that. They come see us and we'll help them with that. So we're not gonna let a kid not play because they don't have an ASB card.
Right.
Right, so, okay. All the money that we bring in from our gates, from all our home events, that the money goes into an account at the high school, and it's called the gate, ASB gate account, and then that money is then redistributed among all the sports for their budgets. So we don't go to ASB general for any of the money that we put back into the athletic program. And so I meet with the coaches and I sit down with Deborah Brown and we put together a budget. And not everybody's budgets are the same, because not everybody has the same amount of needs. Before I became the athletic director and our uniform rotation, everybody got the same amount of money. Well, that didn't really make sense because football jerseys are more expensive than cross country shorts, and so we don't necessarily flat out take care of everything, but we do put a large number or a large amount towards when we do the uniform rotation for the high school. And now we're able to start doing some of the junior high because we now have some money that we can use that we haven't had access to. We're doing that. So sports, there's certain sports on a certain rotation, and then I think it comes up about every 4 years. Now a program can get new uniforms before that, they have to fundraise and do that out of their own account, out of their own money for doing that. I think it's
So then if they're next in the rotation and they already fundraised for their new equipment, then do they get skipped in that next rotation?
No. We might make a move, like for example, there was a program that needed some stuff, boys basketball this year, and one of the sports, wrestling, was up, and we just said, we'll wait till another year and then traded places with them and get there. But usually that doesn't happen a lot. But if you wanted to get something else, you could. But your rotation is, is on that rotation something through there. So, okay. So if you want to get, more fancy or more stuff, that's fine. But that's on the program to do the difference. So I've been pretty frugal with that. I mean, it might open up a little bit more with it, but we're we just know that I want to make sure we never have to go in the hole. We always have something that kind of backed up in there. So I think right now our gate, after all the transfers and stuff, I think we have $7,000 to $10,000 in the gate account. So if something came up, we do have a little bit of money there to take care of something unexpected came about. And just to let you know too, like, so for example, wrestling, we have to go to multiple tournaments, and so they get budgeted more money for those tournaments than, let's say, basketball does, because they don't go to tournaments like we do. They, volleyball goes to tournaments, so money is put into their account for that to help pay for that tournament. It doesn't cover all of it, but it covers most of it. So everybody has just a little bit different there. We try to be we are very equitable with like baseball, softball, and that kind of stuff, basketball with the budget wise. And then anything they fundraise on top of that, that's a bonus for them. So like the girls program at this time has a little bigger budget sitting in their ASB account, but they've also done fundraising. We've had a couple new coaches the last couple of years in basketball, so they're, once they kind of get settled, that might change. Okay. And then that's for individual team sports. The district budget, the one that I have access to, the last few years was set at $200,000. A couple years ago, we just said, hey, let's just put everything into one account, because we used to have a transportation account, an officials account, this, and so forth. We just put it all into one budget to use that. This year we started out with $180,000 because we took a 10% cut like we did across the board. Anything that's left over in that account does not roll over. Okay, so it gets, we'll put it however that works over here on this side of the parking lot. But so we're not sure what we're going to have next year. Obviously, that's part of what we're going through right now. But if you look at that list there, those are the things that we pay for. The biggest by far expense is transportation. Okay, officials has gone up, which officials are getting paid more, which is, they need to. But I would say, just off the top of my head, that's over $30,000 a year. And that pays for all the junior high and high school. When this one right here, that covers high school and junior high for transportation for officials there. Uniform rotation comes out of that. Safety equipment, stuff that needs to be provided by the school for a sport. So for example, football helmets, okay, is something that's, we have to have those to play, and shoulder pads, that comes out of that money. Now, if I want something, I'll say because I am the football coach, but if I want something on top of that, then I have to do that with my own stuff, but that comes out of their softball helmets, baseball helmets that they use, that kind of protective equipment, it comes out of this budget. And then anything, athletic training supplies for our, tape, that kind of stuff that we need to have comes out of that account also. And then anything else that comes up athletic wise. I have in parentheses there mileage change. That's huge. Prior to this year, we were paying over $500 or over $5.50 a mile for a bus. And then the bus driver's wages on top of that. Mr. Reichmeyer and myself were, kept asking because we thought it was pretty high. And now they've got the new system in, and we're paying like $1.78 a mile for buses. So that's going to help. So that got retroed back to the beginning of the school year. So budget wise, that's going to be a big help. Big help on that. Okay, we're doing that. And then a lot of us will take support vehicles because they're cheaper than a bus. And we can do that to help, and plus we have a lack of bus drivers. We know that's an issue. Like we could not make up one of the games from last week with the junior high because we didn't have a bus driver available that day that was able to make it up. We couldn't get them there. And so, so being able to have coaches drive, for wrestling, we had to compete on Tuesday. We took 2 support vehicles instead of a bus, which overall is cheaper to do that. That's going to be a big help in the budget wise. If you look there also, right now we have 47 high school coaches and 35 junior high coaches, and then numerous volunteer coaches. I'm not sure how many we have out there. I know in football we have 2 volunteer coaches. Every sport I think pretty much every sport has a volunteer, 1 or 2 coaches doing that. They help it out. I'm going there. And then, and the other part, and the funny part is that we have our athletic secretary is a 0.5. That's a position there, and so what we have there. I will just say, just to be honest with you, she's still doing a 1.0 job, but she's a 0.5, and she's doing other things, and some stuff we missed some things, nothing major, but some things that kind of slipped through the cracks just because it's, the transition, and she's got to do other stuff too, so that makes it kind of tough. And her job is just not, doing stuff for me, but she does all the scheduling for all the facilities. She's in charge of getting all the workers lined up. Our game got canceled Thursday, so we moved to Saturday. You have to make sure we have people there to do that and stuff. There's just, taking care of all the money, there's just a lot of things that go with that. So having it there. And then move on to facility and equipment updates, capital projects for athletics. The only one I can think of, and Russ can correct me if I'm wrong, the one we've had since I've been athletic director is the renovation of the field house, which was not only athletics, but classroom, because we have classes in there every day. So it's not just for athletics, it's for classroom. PE classes also in there.
But I guess I will correct you, the football field.
Well, I didn't know if that came from, I wasn't aware that came from capital funds.
Yeah, that was capital.
Okay, so that's what I wasn't sure of, and I wasn't athletic director then, so that's what. But I wasn't 100% sure.
And we actually, we have, now it needs being done again, but we repaved the top surface, resurfaced the track facility.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago, so we had to replace it.
And that's a capital.
Okay, perfect. And so then other stuff that's happened, upgrades that we've had, the district budget that I have at my disposal. We've updated new pole vault, high jump pits, equipment, discus cage, which is a really nice one. Shot put rink we had to redo that because it got displaced by another portable we put on campus. Storage sheds that we have that were extremely valuable. Just, you always have storage space, not enough of it, right? Baseball, softball, we bought an accessory to to use that for nail dragging and screening the fields. And, you know, it's a lot better than what we had before. You know, those are some of the main things we've done there. There's still some things that need to be done, but that's, you know, we don't really, I don't want to say this, it's our stuff, so we do the best of what we have. We don't complain about what we don't have. This is what we have. This is our place, and we go with that. But there are definitely some things that need to be looked at in that area. And then athletic training, we have a training room, you know, that we have a, you know, ice machine, tape, that kind of stuff, but we do not have an athletic trainer. Not very many 1A schools do. Blaine's the only one that I know that has a full-time athletic trainer. But it's, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's something that, I mean, I know it's, you know, it's something we just don't have, but it's something that's needed just because things that go on. I mean, like we had an incident at a basketball game earlier this week where, you know, like we had a couple of medical professionals in the stands who could help us out there. But we had our wrestling tournament here in December, and the Boost Club and the wrestling program, we paid for having an athletic trainer there the whole day. You know, so we had somebody there to take care of stuff. And so, but that's one of those things that's just becoming more and more prominent. You got to have that stuff, right? And then that's about all I got, I guess. And then I'm ready if you guys have any questions. The only thing I would say to wrap up for me is, and you know, representing the athletic world, you know, as a co-curricular activity. I mean, we, you know, I think I missed grades there, didn't I? I did. Academic performance. So overall, I don't have the numbers on that, but we all know that when athletes or when students are participating, their grades are better. We hold them, we do grade checks. And so that's something that's, you know, make sure that they're keeping their grades up and doing that. And it just always finds that, you know, some of the parents always want to say, I wish, you know, you had, you know, sports year round because, you know, kids keep their grades up a little bit better, but that's kind of a big deal there. It's one of the things we offer about Baker, you know, and I know me and Mr. Brockman here and stuff, and I mean, nobody really calls me by my first name. This is always coach and stuff, and someone doesn't use my first name, I never answer. I think they're talking to somebody else.
I can remember it.
Yeah. But if we don't have we don't have that stuff that we have here, along with our CTE programs and drama and so forth, we're going to lose students because that's a big deal. You know, it's kind of a big deal. And so I'm not here to talk about cuts of programs and that, but we just know, especially how we're located, and there's so many other districts right there. If we start losing some of that stuff, we're going to lose some of our students. You know, doing that. So that's all I got. If you have any questions, or I don't know if I'm allowed to answer any questions. Go ahead.
I think we'll go around. So I'll go around this way, but if you have questions.
No, I'm good.
The only question I have is if, so doing with the grade checks and things like that, if their grades are not well, are they ineligible to play and not?
So how we run it is, first of all, the WIA has some certain rules, and so we got to follow what they do. We can be more stringent, and we are. But the big thing is if a student fails more than one class, the next trimester they're ineligible for 5 weeks. Okay, and then they can start going there. In season, we do grade checks every 2 weeks. And so if a student is failing a class, they can still participate. After that 2 weeks, if that grade is not brought up, they're ineligible to play. It's that, you know, it's that vicious cycle. You know, I always say at my parent meetings is that, okay, a kid has to miss practice to get their grades up. I get that, but that's also going on the other end. They're not going to be maybe playing as much because they're not at practice. So let's just take care of their grades. But as soon as a student gets their grade up to passing, they're automatically eligible. And then, then go back to the next grade check time again, then we kind of get that cycle. So we try to hard up. So we have a couple of students right now who aren't participating because of grade issues right now.
That was always a sore spot for me. I was always on academic probation, so I never got to compete. So I quit, you know? And I think
Yeah, but look where you are now.
Look where I am now.
Yeah, so we give them a chance to get that made up, and then as soon as they do, then I get the information and then let them know that they're able to.
I guess I'm just curious what your biggest challenges are. I mean, we talked about bus drivers, we talked about, athletic trainers and, paying for referees and things like that.
Well, I don't know if I could say to one, I mean, it's all there, right? I mean, it's just, the biggest thing is, we want to provide opportunities for our students, and I am saddened over my career to see that, less kids taking advantage of that opportunity or finding ways not to participate because, being held accountable on certain things, right? That's has nothing to do with money, and just, that's one of the things that's been hard. That's one of the things I love about this community because, again, I'm kind of old school in a lot of ways, how I do things. If you talk to former athletes, I'm really soft now compared to what I was 25 years ago. No, but, we hold, and the community wants that. They want their kids to be held accountable. Like, here's what we're going to put in hard work and get there. It might always be what you want, but those are the lessons that we're trying to push there, right? Buses it's a nightmare. I mean, it's not just we just don't have drivers, it just makes it tough, right? It makes it so, like, for example, Tuesday night, the basketball team, we had one bus driver take the team down, and then another bus driver had to go pick them up afterwards because we didn't have, couldn't take off with their roster, take their off their regular scheduled trip and stuff. Do that numerous times. We had one bus, last spring we had one bus drop a kid off, come back, pick another team up, pick another team. Then it was like 3 trips to do that, right? That's why we're trying to help, and there's some things that we're trying to do to make things easier, but there's more complicated than I want to get into right now, union stuff. But but we're trying to make some changes just because we have to help each other out. That's kind of the part there. Officials is just a lack of, and it's hard because we see it at games how officials are treated, and a lot of people don't want to. One of the things that's helped is they get paid instead of wait till the end of the season. Now we're on a new program, or a new setup with this. So right after a game, officials have to put in the score of the game, and then that generates their check to get to them. So you're trying to get young guys in or young women in to officiate. They had to wait 3.5 months or 4 months to get their check. That's tough, right? And they have to put out before you get your uniform and whatever you need. Like if you're a baseball or softball, you got to have the equipment to be behind the plate, and they were seeing that. So this helped, but it's still the crowd issue is a problem there.
Yeah.
And then just lack of overall funding for our base for what we need to have done, because we've fallen behind some other schools in our facilities, what we have, and we try to get through our football fields great, but we can't overuse it, and that makes it tough for other sports that could use it, and then we just can't, like, well, in the spring, why not let soccer team use it because football's not going well. Then it's a Title IX issue in the fall because we can't do that, right? So we are less than, and the only school that uses their football field that's not turf for soccer and football year round is Burlington Edison, but they also don't have any sub-varsity events on that field. They have enough field spaces, so all their sub-varsity stuff is off there. We don't. Our junior high plays on there, our youth plays on there, JV, C team, varsity plays on that. So it's a lot of activity on the field. But and then we're limited here with our practice space, right? And we lost a lot of it when we put the fence up for the baseball field, which needed to be done, but we lost a lot of practice area for doing that. And on top of that, our soil's not great. Soil's not great. Clay doesn't work very well. So, but just trying to keep that going, trying to provide the opportunities for our students is that's the daily challenge.
We're all interested in seeing these programs grow and be successful, and like you said, there's a process between winning and attracting students to that, and it seems like there's a lot of connected things that we can look at to try and help these programs grow, whether it's athletic trainers and other things to help support that.
And we have to realize there's, we got to be honest about 2 other things. We're in a really good conference, like the Northwest Conference, and we're in a multi-level conference. I don't know if everybody understands that, but we have 3A. We compete against 3As, 2As, and 1As. When we go to postseason, we go to 1A, and but for our regular season, we're playing everybody, and we're very competitive in across the board in our sports. Like the Northwest Conference comes home every year with multiple state trophies, right? And then coaches is another one where it's not like the old days when you were a teacher and you coached. It doesn't happen as much, and so it's it's hard to everybody says, "Well, just get a new coach." Well, when we put out you know, when you put out, you know, a posting, we don't get 27 applicants. You know, that's just a fact. I mean, and then, you know, coaching salaries, you know, you're not gonna live on a coaching salary. And, you know, and then to have to be able to schedule your work to get off work to be here at 2:30 in the afternoon, you know, that's a challenge. And it's a challenge, and some of our coaches are getting older, myself included, and, you know, and some are teaching like that. When they step away, trying to get, feel that's gonna be a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Huge challenge. That's why when I took the job as athletic director, the first thing I said is that I wouldn't take the job if I had to give up coaching, because I didn't want to have to hire 3 new head coaches. Got a real smart, you know, that didn't look very promising.
Yeah, right. We want to do just paperwork.
And it's tough. I mean, that's the other part of it too. There is more paperwork, and I know Mr. Brockman, you know, he's a former coach, and I mean, sometimes I just sit back and I wish I could just coach like I used to, but there's just so much more, and they keep adding more and more stuff you have to have training wise, and it's a lot, and so some people just, I don't want to do it.
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
You had mentioned, you know, if our programs aren't as strong or they don't get cut, that we might lose enrollment. Do you have a sense of if our athletics are a draw for students to the district, actually bring in enrollment to the district?
I don't know if it is or not. It's not like the college portal stuff. We don't, you know,
Yeah.
But I would have, over the years, we've had a few families that have moved here for that, but generally I would say that's not a very high percentage.
Okay.
I mean, I can think in the programs that I've coached, and then obviously some of them were a little, you know that hasn't been, it's not like every year we get good, but I just know that if we don't, that we've also at the same time, I would say it's probably a bit of a wash. We've had people leave to go do sports at other places.
Yeah.
You know, than here. You know, I've had a couple of those athletes do that. We had, you know, one this year has done that, so.
And is that because maybe we don't have the programs they're looking for?
It might be, you know, it might be a little bit, you know, doing that, but then what's nice is you can go on and practice, and then you get to compete at the level you do that. So, like if we have a really, like a couple of swimmers, then they would not compete at 3A level, they would have went to the 1 and 2A level, but they can go because we don't offer that sport here, right? So.
Well, and I want to make a comment before my next question. It's not just, I did a little research of my own, and it's not just grades that students benefit from with participation in sports. It's attendance increases, test scores, long-term civic engagement. They tend to engage in more schooling after high school. And students who continue to participate in athletics in college are more likely to complete college and stay in school. And it's also tied not just to higher levels of educational attainment, but then job satisfaction down the road, right? So the investment that we make in that 50% of students who are playing, and if we can get it back to whatever our pre-COVID levels were and make that a target, that's not just enrichment. That is a lifelong investment in those students to do better all the way through. And so I just want to honor the value of the work that you do, and that what athletics do for our students.
Before you ask a question, can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Like last spring, the Bellingham Police Department came in because they're recruiting for officers, and they want people who've been part of teams, you know, involved in sports as the people are kind of shooting for, targeting. So they asked, hey, do you have anybody who's graduated the last 4 or 5 years that maybe, you know, they're still around, they're, you know, and they're still not quite maybe set in their career. We would love to have them because they want that. And, you know, that's a huge part of it. I mean, I know we're looking at numbers and just talking about wins and losses. And as I've gotten older and more experienced, I mean, we don't talk about that as much as the other stuff. And then when I look at you, I look at the kids you went to school with, the students and athletes. Those guys are great community people for us. They're great dads. You know, they have successful businesses. They're, they help out the school when they can. I mean, it was a great group of guys, that, and girls that were going through the school, those guys giving back when they're still in our community.
Yeah, they're now coaching my kids.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
serving on the school board.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So I just wanted to really honor that and highlight
Thank
that. So my question about enrollment. I know you said you didn't want to get into it, but I'm really curious about even just a brief idea of maybe why that participation number has dropped since COVID.
Well, I mean, some of it's my own just personal beliefs, and so.
You don't want it, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, to be at practice every day, to show up and be willing to give your best effort all the time. I mean, it's I find it's harder for kids to buy in. And I don't want to it's hard for me to say that, publicly from this standpoint, because I don't want to offend anybody, but, and I'm not saying, I'm perfect or anything, but that's the stuff I've seen under the changes. It's just that, and then for some kids, it's just okay to quit, and so it makes it hard. Like, it's hard. I want to do this where I'm not where I think I should be. And so, or some, the coach doesn't like me, and so I'm not going to get the play. So I'm not going to do that. And then the other step is put that first step out there and say, hey, give it a shot, see how it goes, and then, some kids just don't want to put themselves out there like that. But I think just a, general combination of all that stuff, obviously COVID probably had a little bit to do with that. Just, because of, kind of buttoning down and buckling up, and stuff like that. Put yourself out there and try, and so that's just me. I mean, I'm just a guy that, been around for a while seeing that, but that's my sense on that. And, and then just with the expectation of people, instant gratification, I don't want something right now. And, you can do it right and work your butt off the whole time and you still might not get what you want. But athletics aside, down the road, that's going to benefit you because you know how to you have to do the struggle, how to do the grind, right? And get there, I take a lot of pride in that. Our coaches take pride in that, that's one of the things that's really, really important, besides the wins and losses. And I'll get the pushback. Well, it's easy because you guys are still, but that's the expectation. We'll give our best effort. If you want to see that, come by a wrestling practice one day or come by practice, watch what the kids are going. I mean, what they're being asked to do, right? I mean, it's in all my years, all my years of coaching, and I've coached over 100 seasons now total, and COVID wrestling season was in my top 5 years ever, just because of the kids coming with a great attitude every day, working, had to wear a mask every day, practicing and stuff, but that's what they wanted to do, and it was just so much fun for 2 hours of doing anything else. It's just having fun with these guys, and pushing them, and it's it's pretty gratifying to see kids come in. They can do 2 push-ups at the beginning of the season, and at the end they're doing 20. They get a little smile on their face, right? Because they can do that. So those are the things that we don't always see in wins and losses. What's going on there?
Yeah, and I really appreciate your presentation, Ron. I think, some of the value, I think what you're saying about the relationship between enrollment and athletic opportunities is very correct. And the board recognized that in making a couple definite statements several months ago in terms of our budget, that that support for the co-curricular program was that was one of the things that we intend to continue. I mean, we'll like you mentioned, all of our programs need some trimming here and there to make our budget work, but we're not going to eliminate. And I think I'm very pleased to see your numbers on both boys and girls. I think that's, as a father of 3 girls, I know, and you yourself know how important that is in creating the kind of citizens that we need.
Yeah.
And I think that all the work that you and the rest of the coaches and and supporters show in that way. Mount Baker grads are known for their work ethic.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, thanks for filling us into the budget process. I was part of getting, originally pinning down a number for transportation there because we had a blank checkbook and we can't.
Yeah.
We can't have budgets with a blank checkbook. And so I think knowing how you're working that now is useful for me.
Yeah.
And then one thing I wanted to point out too is that I don't think people realize it as much as I've seen both you and other coaches being a mentor to students. And when you look at our student population, a lot of kids don't come from a Ozzie and Harriet family. It's something you step up and do. And I've watched kids from families that I didn't think had much, these kids didn't have much going for them. And seeing how they've become productive members of society, both your efforts and other coaches. And I think we can't underemphasize that enough. It's those intangibles that are part of the program. And if you could speak a bit to the character building and how you engender that amongst the coaches.
Well, everybody's gonna be a little different, right? And how they do that, I think we overall do a pretty good job. I mean, we're very deliberate in how we want to approach our students with the programs I'm involved with, especially because I have that control. I don't feel comfortable telling another coach how they should do stuff. I mean, we're gonna follow the rules, we're gonna do things a certain way like that, but how you intertwine that message is up to you a little bit, right? One thing I did want to mention about our coach, when I said 47 coaches, not all those coaches are full-time coaches. We do a pretty good job of splitting up stipends so we can get more people involved around the kids. And that goes a long way to speak to the coaches that are willing to give up some money, to be able to do that, right? So that's a big part of that too. So I guess for me, I'll just talk about, obviously the sports that I coach. My staffs are great. My top assistant is a Mount Baker grad, who was a freshman or a senior my first year at Mount Baker 30 years ago, and very strong in faith in what we do, and we want to press that. I mean, it's like about being a good husband, being a good father, being a role model when you can in the community. And we stress those things. We talk about them, like we're at football camp, we'll have a session where we'll talk about those things every night. There's a certain aspect that we'll talk about. Wrestling is right now it's interesting because I have 7 kids on the program that I coach their fathers. And so they're around, and they want to be part of it, they want to get back to that, they want to be involved, and they see that, right? And I see those guys, doing that in their own personal lives. So but we're pretty, we're open about it. I can go from 0 to 100 pretty quick and get in somebody's face and chew a little bit, but I will always come back around and say, this is why I'm doing that. Because, there's something we see in you that I don't want you to believe this, but it's not going to be easy. You got to work, so there's going to come a time when you got to take care of your family. Things aren't going well. So what are you going to do? You're going to quit, or are you going to find a way to get it done? And those are things we just, when I coach softball, I tell them, I said, I know you guys are females, but you're athletes first, female second. I want you guys to be strong, independent women when you get older, and as your mom and wife and so forth, and doing those things. And so those are just all kind of tied into how we do that stuff, again, that's not the look over here, hey, you got to put this offense or this defense, or balls hit the first base, you got to run our second, what are you doing? Those are important, but those other things that those life lessons that we try to really implement in those guys. And we take, I think the majority, try to do it. And I think we do a pretty good job overall with that. Not always right. I mean, I've apologized sometimes for, I probably shouldn't have handled it that way, or, that wasn't the way it goes, but, I love it when I'm walking through town and coach, and they come over and say, how's it going? And then I have to smile because I don't remember their name from 28 years ago, but it's like, yeah, right. So, but that's all part of the deal.
Well, if there's no other questions, I just,
Just some quick comments. I am so glad you brought up all the background information about what athletics is. It's just not athletics, it's drama, it's music, it's all the arts. I mean, it is there, and it's a fact that students are more engaged and they do better in life in general. I just wanted to say something about Coach Leppert here, Ron. I met him this last week or so. I've known of him. The 2A art conference, it is a tough conference. I'll put our teams up, our 2A teams up against anybody, anywhere. The kids just really compete. I've seen it and witnessed it. He's got a great reputation out there among the athletic directors. He is advocating not only for Mount Baker, but for the league in general. And I want to thank him for that over the years. And my former athletic director, Jerry, and he and some others did some really great work around the conference a few years ago just to get it to where it is now. But thanks, Ron, for
Appreciate that. Thank you. That's why I like being here.
Yeah.
So, all right, perfect. Thank you guys.
well,
very
thank
much.
you so much. The next up was action items. We'll start with Mount Baker policies 6550, capitalization threshold for leases and subscription-based information technology arrangements. So let's see. Brian, I think you might be the best one to address the board on this one, since you're the one that brought that forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and there's a bit of a story that you guys probably know about it anyway, so, excuse me. So, it's based on a rule, GASB 87, is about how we report leases. And when we report a lease, when we have one, say for the storage rental units we have out there, we have to report it in 2 separate account codes as principal and interest. And there's a capitalization process of that as defined as leases. That was several years ago, well before my time, but apparently there was lots of really good guidance and work around that. And then the governmental Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, turned around and said, oh yeah, now do subscriptions too, online subscriptions, and gave really no guidance about that. So that's what I hear from other directors. That was last year. And why it's important that you know that is because we will be audited on last year. And my notes to the auditor simply says that we did not come in compliance with GASB 96. It was supposed to have been done, and it was simply not. I found a folder that had one PDF of an email about a conference, but no actual work done for GASB. So I got to year end and it was way too late and it's not done. So this policy is a step in coming into compliance with those rules. I've been tracking subscriptions and coming into compliance. So when the auditor says, well, you didn't do this, we can say, but yes, but now look, we are. And what this policy will do is, first of all, show the auditor that we're taking it seriously and coming into compliance, but also it sets a threshold for things that don't need to be reported. So currently, if we have a $10 subscription to National Geographic Online for the library, I would have to capitalize and report that, and everything else that is an online internet subscription. With this policy, it sets a threshold at $8,500, and any subscription that comes in under that, I do not have to report. I have to find it, I have to tick a box that says it's under the threshold, and then that's it. So it's about the workload. It's also just a part of the compliance that they recommend that we take in Sabitas, is not doing everything, but setting a threshold. So to get to de minimis threshold, we took 5% of expenditures, which is the minimum fund balance policy, as you guys all know. And then what's de minimis to that? I said, well, half of 1% of 5% of expenditures, which is the same math that Everett did, same math that Stanford Camino did. There's other districts that set a very high one. I know there's a local district that has a budget very similar to ours that set the threshold at $40,000 so that they don't have to report much. They expect the auditor to tell them to lower it, but for this year they had to do less. So I went with what I thought was correct, what I think the auditors would like, and that's the policy that I'll ask you to approve today.
So any questions?
It's a policy that, do we need to delete another policy that this is replacing?
Nope, it's brand new guidance. It's the GASB, the board, just makes up rules. They were on 96 when they made up this one. And prior to that, there was no reporting requirements around this.
Okay, it's just odd because this is a policy that it reduces the amount of reporting that we have to do. So it makes it sound like there was something else in place that made us report more information.
Just the rule. So they put the rule in place, and the rule says report everything unless you have a capitalization threshold. And
Okay,
here's how to set one up if you'd like to.
and this policy gives us an exemption to that rule.
This policy puts a clarification on the rule to say anything under $8,500 does not need to be reported in this certain way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain, I'm gonna propose that I'll entertain a motion for first and final reading and adoption of policy 6550.
Motion to approve Mount Baker policy 6550 first and final.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much for your explanation, Brian, and your work putting that together. Next is Mount Baker, we don't, let's see, I don't have the policy on advertising. I don't have the number here. There we are. This is policy 6815, advertising on district property, is up for second reading. We've looked at this before. Any questions or comments on?
I guess I just have a general comment. I think I mentioned it before, I don't feel like reviewing this policy is a good use of our time, these discretionary policies. And there's an opportunity cost against meeting our strategic plan and our mission statement. So I guess I'd like to propose that we have a board discussion on maybe some procedures for addressing policies, the three different types, right? Discretionary, mandatory, and I think we can have a better approach to be more efficient with our time, especially if we're have a backlog of like 100 policies or whatever the number is, and allow us to focus our limited time and resources on our strategic plan.
So just to fill you in on how we've approached that before, when we had a large backlog of policy, we actually did launched a review of all of our policies, and I think at that time we had even more than we do now as far as a backlog. And so what we did, the board appointed 2 board members to go through those over a period of several months. So those 2 board members took a chunk of them at a time outside the board meeting, and then divided those into ones that those 2 board members felt are easy first and final reading policies that we could recommend back to the board. And you still had the opportunity to read through them all yourself, but it helped to have that more detailed look. And then I was one of the board members. We pulled out those that we thought merited more board discussion or focus, and highlighted those. So that was the process. So it didn't take up a significant amount of board time, but we got all of our policies at that point up to date. And it's something like this where it's discretionary. Yes, it is discretionary, but if you're going to have advertising, it's discretionary because you don't have to have advertising. But we do. I mean, we put posters from various businesses that may support an athletic program or something. And so if we're going to do that, we need to address it in policy. And so that clarifies what, and that's kind of the background of.
That's good. I didn't want to take a lot of time now, because I think it should be a board discussion. I have some ideas to make it even more efficient. Because we spent 5 minutes on this, it's 5 minutes that we could have spent talking about something else.
Right.
And so I think there are things that we can do to be more efficient. That's all I'm saying.
Any other questions or comments on this policy?
I had an opportunity to read the contextual information from the policy and legal news that Tammy printed off from us from WASDA that talked about this policy and sort of the background of why it was important. I don't know if others had a chance to read it. There was a cautionary tale about a district that did have advertising policy, but it did not cover them. And they had multiple federal cases and one that went to the Supreme Court because of the advertising banners that they were trying to manage around their sports fields. And in reading that, it gave a really important clarification about the designation of discretionary policy. My first understanding of discretionary policy was sort of like, well, it maybe not be necessary. But there's a passage here that says this is a discretionary policy. Some people misunderstand the categorization of model policies and think that the categorization of discretionary has to do with importance. And this is erroneous. The categorization of model policies reflect whether adoption is mandatory. And then it goes on to say, in the case of the advertising policy, it's discretionary because, like Russ said, you may choose to not have any advertising, so you don't need this policy. So you could choose to opt out. But they further on say, it's tremendously advisable that you adopt a policy if you are going to have advertising. And from that cautionary tale that they gave, I was very persuaded that consistency was really important, and having a policy to create that consistency about who you allow to advertise, whose advertising is not appropriate and you do not want up, is really important for the district to have in place to cover us under the 14th Amendment, because we could be sued for opening up free speech through advertising and then not applying how we offer the conduit of that free speech equally. So it can become an Equal Rights Act issue with free speech, regard to free speech. And so having a policy codified and in place helps us make sure that we are creating a space for that limited free speech in a way that's evenly applied. It doesn't open us up to big legal problems. So I think you know how I'll be voting.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I entertain a motion for second and final reading and adoption of Mount Baker Policy 6815.
Motion to approve Mount Baker Policy 6815, second and final.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And next up is a initial plan for making up, it's under the title, initial plan for making up missed school days due to weather. And Bill, if you could address it, but my understanding is that this would be a proposed board adoption of a plan. So it's not just a discussion of the plan, but we ideally would like to move ahead to adopt the calendar change to make up for the school days that have been missed in the inclement weather.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I'm gonna bring Nick up. Nick, you can bring it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Nick came.
Because Nick did
the writing of it. He made the contact with our associations, knows it in and out, and he's had some conversations with them. But I would recommend that we move forward to it. Nick.
Yeah, so as you saw in the attachments, there's the narrative description of what the thought process was. Just brief overview. It's still early in the winter, so we'd like to keep June 14th is still a possibility, right, as a weather makeup day. It'd be hard to spend it already right now. And we also thought this was being able to make it these days up as quickly as possible and within the calendar as communicated is gonna be what's most supportive of families. I want to publicly acknowledge our labor groups, PSE and MBEA, because they worked very quickly to get their responses back and share their approval. So with that, you see that we're going to change one of our professional development days in February to a student day. And then there is a already makeup day in March that is going to be used, and there's a non-contract day in May that's going to be used. And so that keeps us on track to not change our last day of school, even though we just missed 3.
Nick, real quick question, is there a cost to this?
No, there's no additional cost to this. There's no extra days for folks. That doesn't change. There's no financial impact.
Do that, I just want.
Any other questions or comments?
I was really happy to see all the levels of collaboration and the reach out to PSE and the clear communication to us that had already happened, and that our teachers are willing to do that professional development sort of on their own, not their own time, but to do it and fit it in within their schedule. Everybody kind of worked together to get that adjustment made quickly and efficiently, and I was really happy to see that.
So was I.
Nick, thank you.
Yeah,
Nice
thanks.
job.
Thanks.
So if there are no other questions or comments, entertain a motion to approve the calendar changes as proposed.
Motion to approve calendar changes as proposed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Last action item, Mount Baker Resolution 23-24-15, signatories for bank accounts. And Phil, did you have any?
Well, checks have to be signed and other things, and I need to be on that account, and I'm not, so this is what that's all about.
So that's the purpose of this resolution. Any questions?
Thank Tammy for doing all the legwork on this too. She did a nice job.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 23-24-15.
Motion to approve resolution 23-24-15.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. So that completes the action
People will
items.
get paid now.
What's that?
Yes, people will get paid now.
Yeah, right. So, reports, Director of Finance first.
Sorry, I'm moving in this time. I got all my stuff here. I'm official now, name tag.
Aw.
There you go. All right. Thank you for having me once again. See you all. See if I can share my screen here. All right. So I'd like to start with just some general business, a legislative update. We have been reaching out to all of our local representatives. We're able to connect with 3 of them, have some very positive comments coming from them, and they seem very receptive. Specifically, Nick and I talked to Alicia Rule today, and she was very aware of our situation and is working hard to do everything she can to help us. So far with no success, but they are working for us. So the thing to see some little promise, Russ already mentioned, lifting the special education funding to 17.25%, up from 15. The hang up with that is when they lifted it from 13.5 to 15, the proposed legislation had some reporting to it. And there's an outside group now that's tasked with looking into if we're spending the money that we're given. I could tell them that we are. The governor vetoed that part of the bill, so it's not actually required, but the legislature went for it anyway. I've got to meet with the JLARC people, who they're called, and they know little about school funding and less about special education. So whatever report they come up with, I'm sure will be extensive, but it will take a long time to get there. And it certainly won't be done by the end of the session. So that reporting requirement that was tagged on may hold up that. So that's where we're at with that. Talked to Representative Joe Timmons, and he pushed hard to step down the regionalization instead of simply going from 12 to 6. He led a charge to push to 9 first for a year and then step down to 6. And he's now leading a charge to hold at 9 and just say, let's just not change it anymore. Let it be and hold there, which would be great for us. And they're always talking about enhancing the prototypical school model. There's lots of talk about paraeducators currently and some enhancement that might be made there. Any enhancement helps because the entire thing is frankly unreasonable. So we'll see what they do there. If you're reading the news, you'll see that there's calls all across the state to overhaul the entire funding model. That needs to happen. It's not going to happen in a short session, but there's strong calls for it now. I just got a call yesterday from another district that went into binding conditions. So I believe the total across the state is 7 now, but not everybody's public with that. But there was another one that just tipped over, and I think I mentioned OSPI is expecting so many districts in binding conditions next year that they're actually making their own reporting forms. So we don't get to just share our finance reports with them anymore. They are requiring us to do a certain form because they have more districts that they can manage. So when this gets published, that's a live link to a list of every legislator in the 40th and 42nd district, which are the districts that cross Mount Baker. Anybody who's listening, please reach out to them. They do want to hear from you. They will respond. Your feedback matters, and we can advocate for the things that we think are important. So we try to make it easy for you. There's the live link again. It's on our website. Please do reach out to them. So we got a new binding conditions letter that will be published on the website as well. The board has had a chance to preview that. The main difference there is not as drastic as I hoped it would be based on our conversation with OSPI. The previous target you'll see there, 5% of projected expenditures, $1.526 million. The new target is 4%, so $1.22 million. It's a help. There's a difference of $305,000 that we don't have to reduce to get to our target for 24-25. But it's not the numbers that I thought we were discussing there. So that's the difference. That's the main difference in the letter. If anybody's looking through it, most of the provisions are the same. The other 2 items you'll see is that they call out the apportionment advance that we got and that repayment needs to be done by June. That was done after the first letter, so it's included in the new letter there. And there was a question that if they reduce the target from 5% to whatever they reduce it to, would they allow us to still exit binding conditions provided we make all of those provisions? And that answer is yes. So if we get to 4%, we can exit binding conditions. I think they want us out because they've got more coming in. But I also think that's why they didn't lower the target as much as we were hoping they would. So I'll pause there for questions about any of that.
Questions?
Could you talk a little bit more about they didn't lower it as much as you thought, as we were hoping?
Yeah, we had talked about numbers closer to $1 million or less than $1 million, or percentages of 2 to 3%. And then we got down 1% to 4%.
Okay.
So if you look back at the report that I gave to you guys last time, I was looking at a number that was 3%, and that was better than 4%, but 4% is the number we're given. So that's what we'll work with.
So we have a new letter?
We do.
Okay.
Yep. Was it not sent to you? I thought it was sent up to the board.
Yeah,
Email that to
it was
everybody.
in our packet. It's the January 12th letter.
Okay, so that's the final, or well, that's the latest.
most
It hasn't
recent.
changed.
That is the most recent letter. Yep.
Okay.
And now that it's been presented publicly and to the board, it will be posted on the website tomorrow. We'll get that out in the finance section.
Do we have a date for our next meeting with OSPI?
We do. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
Is it 2 weeks after today?
It may be.
Yeah.
It's on my calendar. I'll make sure that you get
Yeah,
a
if you can
reminder.
send that to me.
Yep. Sure.
Yes, I think so.
And also prior to that, we will need the game plan, so can we, is that, what discussion we may have as far as questions and.
Yep.
So we will need to get together.
Yes.
And sort of plot that out.
So the difference between the 3% we were hoping for and the 4% we got was that, I'm just trying to do quick math in my head, was that around $300,000?
Yeah, each percent would be around $305,000, because it's all based on a percentage of the projected expenditures in the F-196.
Okay.
Other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
So moving on to our normal report, there are the cash balances. Those are not the fund balances. The fund balances are the ones that are reported on this budget status report sheet that you all get. The cash balances are more important in our current situation because the cash is what we use to pay our bills. If anybody's looking at the county treasurer's report, our report is off from theirs by $1,373.09. That mistake is theirs. They missed a void that we sent to them. So that's the correct number, but the county treasurer's report is a little bit different. That will be reconciled in their report when it comes out in January. And you'll also see there's a shift from capital projects to debt service. When I was working to make the transfer for our debt, to service our debt, I worked with Debbie at the treasurer's office, and then I got a note the day that any changes needed to be done from a different person at the treasurer's office that said, hey, you need this to fund this, you've got this coming up. And I thought I did it, but then I did it again with two different people. They weren't talking to themselves, so that transfer happened twice, which is fine. There was going to be another transfer in May anyway, so the money is invested in debt service and can just live there until we can transfer it back if anybody is really particular about it, but there'll be another transfer anyway in May for a payment in June. So that money's gonna be there for now. The vehicle transportation also went down. There's an encumbrance for a new school bus. So money hasn't been spent, but it's encumbered. All right, this is same as it always is. You see enrollment still declining. That's what we expect throughout the year, is enrollment to go down. So that's just reporting on the numbers. There's the expenditure tracking. You see we're about a third of the way through and about a third of the year.
Sorry, how does the enrollment, how does those enrollment numbers compare to what we had forecasted, back in September?
So when we did our budget, that's the top line. We forecast to be at 1536 FTE.
Okay.
So we are below the budgeted number. Orange line is the budget, blue line is the actual. So we are currently bringing in less revenue than we were budgeted to.
Do we typically see that much of a decline during the year? Okay,
Yep, that's tracking per normal.
okay.
Yep.
You know what my next question is.
We'll go ahead and ask it anyway.
What's our downward percent trend line? Like, are we down, aiming down on a trend of 3%? Are we?
We'll look at that more specifically later.
Okay.
When we talk about enrollment projections for budget, which is the last thing we'll talk about today.
Okay, thanks.
So there's the revenue and expenditure tracking. You see we're on track. We're about a third of the way through both, and we're about a third of the way through the year. So there is our yearly revenue comparison. Remember, that's cumulative. So when we had the special revenue come in for the apportionment advance and for the capital projects transfer, those happened in October and November. So the line in December that shows we have more revenue this time of year than last time of year is true. You'll see that level out as there's not more special revenue coming in. And then particularly in April, May, and June, when we start to repay the revenue that we got early in the year, that will be very different the other way. Yearly expenditures, just showing what we're paying. And even with inflation up, we continue to spend less this year than we did last year based on the cuts that were implemented and the reductions that were made. So that's good. Go to the next one here. There's where the problem kind of shows itself, the revenue to expenditure monthly. So you'll see that special revenue coming in October and November, which is typically, November is a low apportionment month. So typically that green line would be much lower in November, and that's expected. But December is a normal month. all things considered. And you'll see that we spent $364,000 more than we received in revenue for the month. Any questions about any of those numbers before we go on to the next portion?
So in going back, I guess it's one slide, but do you have have you been able to adjust to a current projected year-end fund balance based on how our expenditures are going at this point?
I started working on that today, and my numbers are not reliable.
Okay.
So I did that in November, and I was doing that again today, and there is some inaccuracies that I'm still trying to work out.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, when you get that, when you feel comfortable with the number, I would like that.
Yes, and I do have regular meetings with Lisa Matthews set up around these board meetings as we talk about budgeting, and that's part of the budget process is to keep track of it and do those mini budgets. So I'm going to ask her about it, and I have a ticket out to the data center because when I ran some of the specifically payroll reports, I don't think that they're currently accurate.
Mhm.
Okay. So the budget development calendar, this was shared with you from the last meeting, and I don't know that it's going to get large enough up there for us, everybody else to see. But I wanted to show this and get your feedback on it and hopefully proceed with it as is, but make adjustments anytime you want to. Oh,
There you go.
so this is the proposed work around the budget and a timeline for that. So here we are talking about the new binding conditions, doing the December financial status report, and we will talk about budget timeline, hopefully to be confirmed, enrollment discussions, and fund balance projection. Fund balance target. So this you'll see as it goes down, there are some things that happen regularly. Check in with MBEA, PSE. The admin team is regularly looped in here to talk about some of the things that the board discusses. Pam did a great job of getting some of these things together, like the intent to return this sent out, and that's when people hopefully will let us know if they're going to retire, resign, or move on. Again, the check-ins with MBEA here, a budget work session on the 14th, along with preliminary staff analysis and program innovation and reduction discussions beginning in March. When it says program, that's called out there in the CBA, not as a program that you think of like arts and CTE, but that's a program in the CBA as K6 is a program, 712 is a program. So looking by grade band about that, and we'll talk again more about that when we get into the enrollment assumptions. So I know you guys have had a chance to look at this. Are there any questions or recommendations, anything you'd like to see moved up or down, added, removed, anything of concern in this timeline for budget development, which does end at the statutory limit of adopting a budget in July?
Have you got any feedback from others on this timeline?
No,
You looked at it?
Yep.
Looked at it. Yep, it looks
Okay.
good to me.
Okay.
Yep, it's hitting the targets and our timelines and the end dates.
I know there was a thought to do as much or as early as possible. So with the last date that there, you said it was the statutory, okay, so there's a little bit of a buffer there that we could between, what was the statutory?
So the budget needs to be adopted by July 31st, by August 1st. Essentially is when the old budget expires.
Okay. And does this report include a potential bargaining? Is that, or is that totally separate?
That's separate. This is not a bargaining calendar. No.
Okay.
So to help answer your question, Director Fox, these are kind of guidelines and targets we want to hit. We don't want to go beyond those. There's a lot of background work being done before each one of those dates. So if that helps you understand the calendar. So we want to make sure that we have a date set to have things done, but most of this is going to be done before we hit those dates.
But this is more of the calendar for the board's interaction with this work.
Correct. Yep.
And then the district's work that needs to happen before this
Yes.
comes to the board is a totally different calendar.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So the things that we're gonna talk about today, obviously, I mean, this calendar is one of those items on the calendar and has been prepared since before the last board meeting where you were presented. So, yes.
And so I guess, a question that's on my mind is just because this is more of a board targeted calendar and the work that needs to go before for this work to come to us, how do we feel about our timelines that we're roughing out in terms of folks knowing what their work is going to look like for the following school year? When are we trying to target to get that information out to people?
The hard deadline there is May 15th.
Okay,
And that's the final staffing notification of non-renewals, right? You'll see the initial notification is listed here on May 1st. Of course, as we've talked to the bargaining units, we've heard that, and, we're not gonna sit on any information if we know. The hard part is knowing and being sure, because we certainly wouldn't wanna say anything that we weren't sure of, right?
but the
so-
bargaining units are aware of that May
Oh, yeah.
15th date and
Yes, they are.
they've given feedback and yes on that. Okay.
They're very aware.
I would
Yes.
imagine they're very aware,
They're
and I
aware,
guess I just
yes.
wanna make sure that we're doing everything we can as a system to be as humane in that date as possible in what will be a very difficult reality.
Yes, and I appreciate that concern and know that it's one of mine as well,
Okay,
right? That's not the part of the work that I'm looking forward to.
I don't think anybody,
no.
no,
No.
no.
And part of that is also the end of the legislative session.
Right.
So if we do things too soon and the legislature decides to do something or not that we counted on, then we have to backtrack. So
Right.
part of that is a small window between the end of the session and the deadline of May 15th.
Thank you for that clarification.
I think, we looked this last time, I think, the calendar looks very good. I appreciate the detail and that, kind of being able to look at the flow of the work. And I also recognize, I think we've mentioned, the bargaining aspect of it. In most instances, the May 15th deadline comes before completion of bargaining, and so you have to issue your notices based on what you have that day.
Yep.
And whether they look better or worse later, you don't want them to look worse later.
Correct.
If they look better later, so be it. That will allow us to take advantage of that.
But any transparency that we can offer folks and rationale and explanation for these dates, so that it doesn't look like we're jerking people around when there's so much at stake.
Mhm. Yep.
And reiterating why the dates are the way that they are, I think that's just so important.
And I hope having it out there helps people see it and understand the full process as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That we're not just going to put it together on May 1st.
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
That's right.
And also knowing what our goal for budget reduction is, our total goal, gives you a chance to do the math yourself.
Yes,
And anyone can look at that and say, okay, this is how much we have to reduce, and
right.
this is how far you have to cut to get to that.
This is available publicly.
It will be.
It will be.
Yep. I wanted to report it publicly to the board, and then yes, it will be added to the files on the finance tab.
Okay.
Yep. I was thinking when you were talking earlier, Coach, about all the soft skills that you learn.
Yep.
Right, and I remember when I didn't have a ride and I missed practice. And that was the day my mother told me to put it on the calendar. We are staying on track. All right, so the next item is a 4-year projection. So, oh, wait, sorry, it didn't transfer there. Let me share a new screen. And this document, full transparency, we will talk about, but it is not going to be posted because it's a very high level look, and I don't want to be held to it later. It's just for us to kind of look at and work with and talk about what happens if we change some
You realize this
assumptions.
is all recorded, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. And people can see this and they can look at what we do, but I don't want somebody to come to me and say, this is the budget you presented on, you know, and this is what it is going to be. So maybe I can put a watermark on it and put a PDF up there, but it won't be live as an Excel. I wanted to say that publicly before we get started. So what you've got here, this is simply the budgeted numbers. You see on the left side, there's the budget for this current fiscal year. Down at the bottom, if it will scroll a little bit, sorry, my mouse died today. There's the ending fund balance as projected. And then over here is
Sorry,
the,
Brian, has that number changed at all since the last time we looked at this, the ending fund balance?
yes, the ending fund balance changed when we did the F-196, but this is just the budgeted number.
But it hasn't changed since then? Oh, that's just the budgeted number.
Yes,
Okay, okay.
this is just straight from the
Okay,
budget,
okay.
right? So this is a place to start with that we're all familiar with. This is just from the budget. I'm not updated it to put the new things in yet.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why this document is not going to be a useful thing for, you know, people to look at. It's for us to make assumptions and change those. And you'll see that as we go along, because we're going to talk about enrollment next.
Okay.
So what this shows us is to get to the target laid out by OSPI, the reductions necessary are here. And if we do that, you see that's about 11% straight across the board. And again, that's not the plan. That's just assumptions we're making to make these numbers work out. The ending fund balance gets it just above the target. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is enrollment assumptions, because when this was created, you'll see at the top there, one of the assumptions is that enrollment went up. And if we do a cohort model, enrollment will go up. But if you take a look, again, just down to this here, let me see if I can back it out a little bit. So, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Right. We'll just park it here. So you're looking at this instance as enrollment going up about 4%, which drives the number from the state that we get. If enrollment, in fact, is at 0, you look at that fund balance down here and where it is now in relation to the target, well below the target. All right, if enrollment goes down 5%, or the number that we've talked about, down 6%, right, you can see a drastic change to the ending fund balance there. And that's because the reductions necessary, right, that we're going to do here, say that's $2.4 million. We do that because we'll know that, because we'll be doing that when we present this budget. We won't know what the actual enrollment number is until, frankly, we get to the end of the year, because that enrollment is an average FTE throughout the year. So when we talk about enrollment assumptions today, I want you to understand that importance there, right, of what we're going to talk about is how do we move forward with an enrollment projection that makes sense. Because if we miss it, you know, if we project 4% increase based on a cohort model and we get a negative 6%, then we're ending next year at a deficit again. Does that make sense? Okay. So very high level overview. Again, this is not the plan. It's just the way the numbers are budgeted and then the way that they shake out based on our assumptions. Are there questions before I move on from this then?
So you catch that, the issues involved with enrollment projections. And we try to be as realistic and accurate as possible based on the factors that we can observe. But
Correct.
what you don't know are those things that we can't predict.
Correct.
Where did those positive increases in enrollment come from? The federal, what you had before you changed it?
That was based, so, good question, and let me skip ahead and show you some of that. Oh, it didn't follow again, sorry, I need to stop and go back to the next screen. So we'll talk more about this when we get there, but because I have this here. There are some historic numbers. And one of the ways you can get to tracking here, here we go. Oh, there we go. If you go to a cohort model, you'll see that we have a senior class of 74 going out. If we assume 100 kindergartners coming in, then enrollment goes up to 2% to 1537. So that's one way that makes a lot of sense to do enrollment, is just to say, how many do we typically have coming in? Well, it's 100K, 100 kindergartners. And then how many do we have going out? And we know that number because they're our current seniors. So that's where those numbers came from. And when the 4-year budget was projected, those were the increases built in. So that sheet that we were looking at was just based off the budget that was created and approved in July.
This past July.
Correct. So again, a lot of assumptions going into the budget there. And we're hoping to make some assumptions tonight. And I'll tell you that we're going to talk about it. I don't expect the board to take action. I just need to hear your feedback so that I can move forward with making the calculations to present to you next time. Enrollment projection is the first step in looking at how much revenue we have coming in, which sets the expenditure limit to get to the fund balance target, and the rest of it kind of starts to fall into place. So here's the historic. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I'm just surprised to see that we ever had positive numbers for student enrollment projected.
Mm-hmm. And it's simply because if you expect 100 kids coming in and 74 going out, you're going to gain some enrollment.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's the actual trend. And we see that it is not growing enrollment. So again, today we're going to just talk about how to fill in these last two spaces here, right? And this is one that you already saw and we just looked at and talked about. If you assume 74 kids going out, a junior class of 103, 100 kids coming in for that year as well, it's almost a wash in that year. So you'll see that this cohort model would predict an increase of 2%. This is not the model I would recommend that the board take.
So the junior class does that 103 number include an estimate for running start?
Yep. Well, that's FTE, yes. So if more of them go to running start, then when they are seniors, they will count as less FTE.
That's the current junior FTE.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
So
running
we
start
have
is
to
open to
presume
juniors
that
and
we
seniors.
would lose some of those to running start. So it's looking at, on average, how many do we lose? Mm-hmm. Percentage wise.
Yes, and I can look at that. But running start is open to both juniors and seniors.
Right,
So if any of the
right,
juniors
but
want to
not
take it,
all
they
of
could be
them
in
are
and
going
out.
to start in junior. And as
Correct.
juniors.
Yes. Yes, the difference between 103 and 74 though is not necessarily driven by running start. It's that is the second of a historically small cohort coming through. The seniors that just went out and the seniors currently were both historically small groups.
That's the head count that you're looking at.
This is FTE.
FTE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, head count is higher because we do have many students that opt into run.
Got it.
Okay. Questions about the cohort model? No. Okay. There's the percent reductions over time. So you'll see that in 2020-21 school year, there was a significant drop. That was largely due to COVID. We hoped for a rebound. We then lost 3% more, 1% more, and 3% more. Looking ahead, districts that have financial challenges tend to lose more students than they had been losing. So I put a 4% number there. That's the number that I just put there. It could certainly be modified. The board could say, let's do more because we expect more. Or the board could say, let's reduce more because if we miss the target, we want to miss low. We don't want to miss high. that's a choice that we could discuss and talk about today, with another 3% reduction for the 25-26 school year. Questions about the model you got there? If you combine the two, roll the cohort, reduce by the percentages, those are the numbers you get. So you'll see those are, if you compare 1448 and 1405, this one 1475 and 1428. So they're slightly higher than just a straight percent reduction. They're definitely lower than the cohort model. It's a combination of them both and a way that we could go about this.
So do both models assume 100 kids in kindergarten?
They do. And that's an assumption we could change. If we want to assume 90, we could assume 90. We assumed 100 and got about 112 this year.
Okay.
So before we go on, we'll talk about some questions we have around this and what to do. And again, this is a very high level look. So once I get my directive from, and not an action item, but some direction from the board, I will prepare enrollment reports that take into account total enrollment, but then you'll see it broken down by grade band K6, 7, 12, and by school specifically, because we've heard from the community that some schools are growing, some schools are not, some grade bands are growing, some grade bands are not. So once I get the kind of model to work with, I will break it down in total, but then by all of those grade bands. I talked to the administrators about this so they know I'm having this conversation with you, and when they see that, it's not going to look like a gotcha. It's not necessarily a, if we see the junior high has gone down by 3%, that's not necessarily saying then we're reducing the junior high by 3% and Kendall is going to go up by 2%, just the numbers that we're going to be working with. So they know that it won't be a gotcha, but I'll break this all down once we get the directives going forward. So now we need to talk about how we're going to actually make that calculation. And we've talked before about having kind of a contingency built in to say, well, we're going to do our projections and then we're going to reduce 5 kids more. Because if 5 kids leave, we need to make the target for binding conditions. And that gives us a little bit of room to wiggle there. Or we could say, we're going to go straight for it. And if we spend 2 years of binding conditions, then we spend 2 years of binding conditions, but we want to be as accurate as possible. Because that's a possibility. If one kid could make the difference between hitting our fund balance target or not. So that's a discussion I would just love to hear you have so that I can move forward with, move forward in the way that the board would like me to move forward.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I think we used a version of the cohort model to predict our enrollment for this year, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I think I raised concern about that.
That's correct.
I would like to see us be looking more at that trend line. I'd also wonder if, I know that there are local conditions that play in any district with enrollment. I know some schools are getting increased enrollment right now, but I also know that there is a national trend of decline based off of birth rate. And I would love to sort of overlay that trend line that we're seeing to some bigger statewide or national trends to see if other folks have predicted some of this for us. And it's not to say it's going to be 100% true for us, but it's another data point to look at and say, well, we know that the birth rate's going down and we're following a similar trend line as that, and we probably want to predict along that same trend line too. Maybe, that may be another way of thinking about it. And then another thing I was thinking, earlier we saw that we've lost 28 students already during this school year, and you guys said that's pretty typical. Have we considered projecting for the end of school year enrollment or for the anticipated mid-year enrollment instead of September 1 enrollment? So project for those losses. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so instead of projecting what we think our enrollment will be September 1 for next year, let's project that those mid-year losses, say we think we're going to be at this number in January and set our budget there.
So typically what we do is project an annual average.
Yeah.
So looking back, and the numbers that I put in there for previous years were annual average FTE.
After that.
Correct, because
Loss.
that's what the apportionment would be.
Yeah.
Because when you're budgeting higher, you get higher numbers.
Yeah.
When the numbers are higher, you get more. When the numbers are lower, you get less. It's adjusted monthly after January. So you project the average annual FTE. And I did that today when I was going through my new budget scrub. And actually, based on historic trends, so last year we lost 1.67% more from January to the end. So if we're looking at our number now of 1508, by the end of the year, we're looking at about 1505. So there's not a significant drop percentage-wise by the end.
By the end of the year.
Correct.
Okay.
So I did that, and I did that for the budget that I was looking at, but I didn't do that for this because I needed to hear your guys' discussion first.
But you're a step ahead, as you should be.
I did that for the other report that's not ready yet.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
So, you know, to your point about birth rates,
Yeah.
I think yes, but also those kids are still too young to have much of an impact.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see that coming, and there's some other things locally, other things locally that we may see impact our enrollment as well, that we're watching out for on the future. Just looking at next year,
Yeah.
I can look at the county birth rates. I think the main driver in who's gaining and losing is housing.
Yeah.
That's right.
And the cost.
Correct, and who's
Housing
building and where housing is
gas
available.
costs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, but if you look at a county report of enrollment, we went down by about 4.2%. Compared to the county, Nooksack went up about 4.2%, and they built a whole bunch of houses.
And obviously, we don't have a city council to advocate
Correct.
to change anything in our favor to encourage housing.
So that's a factor. We're looking at, you know, if there was a housing development being built, which is actually one of the things I looked at before I came out here, is what growth would there be? And I think there was, the Nooksack tribe was building a triplex, and that was it. That was the only record of building permits that I could find.
That's good.
So I will look at the county birth rate, but I would guess that the difference in people coming and going from the school district or in and out of the county as Whatcom County continues to grow would be more impactful than the birth rate.
That makes sense. And I suppose we would be looking at the birth rate from 5 years ago to predict K.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we don't care about the birth rate. Well, not yet.
What we will in 5 years.
Yes, yes, not yet, but
Well,
Yeah.
Along that same line though, is probably even more so availability of rental units. Because families with children tend to be lower income than average households. And so therefore are looking more at rental than purchase. And purchase nowadays, who's gonna be able to afford anything with the combination of cost and interest rates?
Right. And you look at the zoning in the county and you've got a minimum of R5 zoning in most of our communities, so you're also paying for extra land.
Yep. And there are factors that we can't necessarily predict. I mean, there's lots of businesses that are reducing right now. Nike just made layoffs. Amazon. I have a friend who works for the city of Portland. They just restructured their entire city office in anticipation of an economic downturn. And if that happens, then maybe people who own multiple homes will start selling them and families will start buying them, but we can't predict all of that accurately. But it's my job to try. So
Let's keep going around. Ed,
Sure. So the model that we choose, or however we do that, you mentioned it might affect the binding conditions. What about our budget development process? Is it going to be used in the budget development process as well?
yeah, this is the budget development
This
process.
is part of the
yes.
budget development process. Okay.
Yep. And this does not stick us to a number. If you tell me today to do this in this way, and I won't come back to you and say, well, I'm not gonna calculate it again, Ed, we did that already. You know, we look at it as we go, right? But I need some place to start.
When was the last time we were too pessimistic in our, yes?
I'd have to look back and
I
see
think it's
last
been a
time.
long, long
Yeah.
time.
Not the last 3 years, at least, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I'd kind of like for us to be wrong in that direction once.
Okay.
You know?
Yep.
Because we can always come back from that, but it would feel like if we went wrong once, then we can ease back. But if we've always been wrong on too optimistic, then we should correct that. And I know we're talking about rental units and housing and all that stuff, but I think it's also important to focus on what we have control over in terms of things that drive student enrollment. And what we have control over is student learning, student success, the things that we're doing. So my hope is that we are doing things to attract people into our school district. And like you said, there's financial challenges, which tends to make a snowball effect.
Yes, it
So
does.
we have to get that corrected. That's a factor as well. But the more we focus on the things that we're doing to help our students, the better chance we have of actually maybe increasing enrollment even when other school districts are declining, just because we're doing things better. Like Nooksec, for example, is growing. I think partially, I'll give them credit for doing some good things, right, that we could do here as well.
So I hear you saying that you'd like a bit of a contingency and to project lower than maybe what we actually.
That's my input for the
Yep.
board.
Okay.
Is I'd like to be, and it's really hard decision because like you said, it affects budget development.
It
And
does.
I realize there are painful decisions associated with being pessimistic. And I don't want to gloss over that. So there is part of me that would love to not be so pessimistic because I know what's involved with that. But at the same time, we've always been too optimistic, and that creates different problems. I would prefer that we stay on the more pessimistic in terms of student enrollment till we've hit that bottom.
Well, I mean, and from the one enrollment report you had with we were all the way up there, and then even at the beginning, we weren't even anywhere close to that number at the beginning of this year. So my knee jerk is to like, yeah, let's totally go way below the number that we would think. But what are the drawbacks to budgeting too low? Does that mean that like we would get rid of more people than we really would need, and then we'd have to figure out that so is that one of them I would see, but what else would there be?
Yeah, I mean, that's the main factor, right? If we need to make a choice and we decide to budget low, then come May 15th, we'll be handing out more RIFs, reductions in force notices. And that's just what we have to live with, to say, well, we're making this reduction in force based on these projections for the budget, these assumptions. And then if those assumptions don't come true, we can build back from that. This year, we were able to hire several teachers in the K-3 band when there was extra funding based on K-3 class size compliance, right? So that's been a nice change of living here from where I used to live and work, is that we didn't have that pool of people to call on. And we would have a lot of people who have been RIFed and still ready in that, a priority list to return, right? So the difference really is that we have to give more RIFs to more people and cause a major disruption to more lives and families. But then we can come back from that and say, well, now that we know enrollment, we're going to hire more. Whereas if we aim high, then we don't.
Is that the only one thing though in that whole scenario?
I
It's
mean,
just,
You could lose great people,
right,
Mhm.
right? And your most talented
it's like
Folks.
it's scooped up.
are gonna get scooped up
Yeah.
and are gonna be somewhere else. So the risk is losing great people who contribute to the vitality of our district.
Yep, and that's very true in those that may not even, be on the RIF list. And they may feel very secure and they may be some of our best teachers, right? And then they say, well, if I can make a move, then somebody else can keep their job here.
Right, and you see
Right.
people do that.
Yes. It's part of how I ended up here at Mount Baker.
Jason?
Just like Ed, I like the idea of lower number, but I guess that would make us look good on our projection, but then what we just talked about scares me is getting rid of teachers. If we have Nooksack that's growing, right, they're gonna go not very far down the road and come back, and then are we gonna get the good ones back, or are we gonna get the ones that, not the good ones back? There's just a fine line there, and I don't really know the right way to do that. Project lower so that our projections look good, and then, we got more, and hopefully we get the people back. It's two scary things right there. That is pretty tough. And the other thing is, like, we said there was projected 100 kindergartners and there was 112, is what you said. So we're obviously saying we're seeing lower numbers, junior high, high school. High school more than junior high, do we know that, or are we just overall?
I can bring all of that information to you, and have a full projection built out.
Yeah. I guess thinking of that, if it's high school, what do we have to do to make this high school where either they want to stay, right? Or maybe they're not leaving, going somewhere else, or leaving because it's just not their thing. Well, what can we do to make this school their thing, right? Like, to keep these kids, instead of like saying, we're going to lower the number because we're losing these kids, but let's also look at the big picture of what we have to do, the reason why, and what we have to do to keep these kids here, from the kid that wants to go to a different school, from the kid that hates school. There's just a big broad thing that we maybe can look for to keep those numbers up. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, for me, I think, looking back 10, 15 years ago, my position on this very issue was to make as accurate a prediction as we could, and then lower that number by 50. I don't do that anymore because we don't have the capacity to run the district at that level and still maintain the employees here. We had enough wiggle room back then with our budget that we could do that and hire a few extra teachers in September. And we did that a few years. Prior to that, we ended up, I know one year we ended up with 4 teachers more than our enrollment justified, which was the other side of it, which was very hard on that year's budget. So I think, over the last number of years, I've really been, because of all those factors, I've been focusing on trying to make the enrollment as realistically honest and accurate as possible, and calling that the number, and not trying to pad it either greater or less. And so what the risk is there is if we are wrong and it comes in lower than that, it will extend out our binding condition. I think that's probably less of a risk than losing more teachers. And so we're trying to balance those two. I said we have to decide which risk is going to be harder to live with than not. And then the other thing that really is underlying it here is everything we do in developing our budget has to be credible with our unions. Because I don't see any way forward without some way dealing with expenditures for salary. That's 80 to 85% of our budget. And so if we can back up our numbers, and they can look at the same numbers and come to essentially the same conclusions as we do, or at least see that it's reasonable and honest. I think we can sell that. Whereas if we're not seen to be that way, we're gonna have bargaining until we get there. So we'll get there anyway. And so, I mean, that's just my experience. And so I really would would want us at this point, and like you say, you can adjust it as you get more information. But as a starting point, I would like us to be as honest as we can. And that would be my recommendation.
Can you go back to the slide that shows the, not that one, that one,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. I mean, there's different ways to think about the numbers, right? You could just take a straight average, that 7% from COVID is really gonna deepen your average perhaps more. So then you might look at, you know, your mean, right? And say, okay, well, 3% is popping up an awful lot lately. That's not a bad guess. I do appreciate what Russ says, right? We need to be able to have data to lean on to justify our choice.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't just be a,
Yeah, I guess what I would say is break it down by grade. So instead of looking at the district and the whole number, if you do, okay, K, we say we're gonna give it 100. And then all the rest of them, at least we know what numbers we have now, what we can reasonably expect to roll up. If you break it by grade, that takes care of the smaller or larger cohorts. And then you bring all those numbers together and that's the bottom line. As opposed to looking at the whole thing, you know, it's like me taking off my glasses, I can't see anything. But if I look really closely at each thing, I can see them very well, and then I can add the number up. And that, I think that might be a method where you could come up with the most reasonably accurate.
How is that different from what we've done in the past?
yeah, that sounds like cohort.
It's cohort.
Part of what, I mean, we talk about potential negotiations and whatnot, and, you know, part of what I would say is the reason we're in the trouble we're in is we've been, you know, unable to make the hard decisions. And now we're getting to the point where we have to make some hard decisions, and they actually are harder than they would have been if we'd made harder decisions all along. So at some point, we have to do that. And ultimately, you know, it's gonna be the enrollment that drives that.
Well, I'm not saying don't go lower than what we would think. I just don't think we should go like really low, like super low, you know, somewhere right in the middle. It's not quite cohort, maybe not quite. So you did talk about that one that's both,
Yeah, you have
right?
the combined version.
Yep, and this one's sort of in the middle. So if you just look at the 24, 25 numbers, the cohort model puts us at 1537, percent reduction is 1448. And cohort, and then with percent reductions applied, 1475. And that 4% number is one that just, you know, looking back historically, there have been lots of, you know, from 17, 18, it's 2s, 2s, 7, 3, 1, you know, and 3. So I just kind of looked at that and said, well, 4 seems reasonable.
So that, looking at, just doing the math in my head quickly, the difference between cohort reduced by 1% versus strictly cohort is probably somewhere around 2 to 3 teachers.
I don't want to get into that discussion yet.
Okay.
Yep, and
No, I mean,
it's not just teachers.
Cost-wise.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
it's like FTE.
correct. But
So I'm not saying
it's not just teachers, and it depends on, again,
Cost.
where those kids are, whether
Right.
they're in the secondary, the primary,
Right.
so it's not a discussion I'd like to engage in yet.
No, I definitely, I
That
appreciate
number is,
that.
your number is pretty
Huh?
close. Your number's pretty close.
But that gives us kind of a more, you know, personal type of look at it, because it's,
So, but this, like, if we're looking at 24, 25, and we're projecting -4% or 4% loss in enrollment, and then we go back to just the cohort model, it's projecting a 2% gain.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a 6% spread. That's a
Correct.
huge amount of money, one way or the other.
So to be clear though, this is a 2% gain, this is a 4% loss, this is a 2% gain reduced by 4%.
Wait, say that again in a different way. It's like, "Oh."
Cohort model, you go up by 2%.
Yeah.
Percent reduction, you don't go up by 2%, you go 1508 minus 4%.
Right.
Right,
The mix of them, you go 1508 up the, 26 kids.
Yeah.
Because of the cohort model, and then take that number down by 4%.
okay. Spinning.
So that's the 1475 versus what was the other number?
1448 is 1508 down by 4%.
But they're both 4%.
Thanks,
But they're
Mike.
not.
This is down 4% after you add.
After
the
you add the
26
20s.
cohort.
Look at the difference in enrollment.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
Right, the raw number as opposed to the percent change.
Yes.
But that still is a very.
Yep.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so the lower number was the 14.
48. And this gets to Russ's point that we don't just want to make it up, right? We need to have some way to back it up to say, we use this method to calculate this.
Yeah.
And again, we're not stuck to it. I just need something to move forward so I can present
Mhm.
the full span of things by grade band, by program.
Yeah.
And we have the other factor that comes in, if you presume a occupancy rate, say, in housing, that would presumably provide somewhat of a floor based on a mix between households that have children in school and households that don't. And so you would look at that change over time in households that do or don't have children. But at some point, unless those percentages change, you with relatively full occupancy, you hit a certain level. I mean, you can't. Every projection of a straight line is always going to be wrong over time. I mean, it's a principle of economics. But I think what we're looking at here is trying to figure out what is the most accurate projection we can come up with, rather and be able to back that up.
how much were we off in our projection for this year versus what actually happened?
By about 28 students. It's about 2%.
So we were about 2% off. And what percentage were we predicting if we were gonna say it was a straight percentage reduction year over year of enrollment? Were we predicting a 2% loss and it was actually 4? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep, so the number right there, 1508, that's actual. The actual budgeted number is 1536. So that's off by, 24, 2%.
So we were,
Mhm. And that was because it was based on a cohort model. And Steve did a wonderful job putting together what he did for us, right?
Yeah.
But he came in later in the year than this and didn't get to have this conversation and do this, right? So when Steve went to prepare the budget, he used a cohort model, which can be accurate, and in that case was not. So his methodology was good. It just was not the year for it.
Well, we're not making a decision tonight,
Nope.
so.
Yep, based on your
Have
input,
some
I think,
feedback?
yep, I think I have my path forward based on your input, so thank you for the discussion. this is another thing that's on the calendar. We're pretty much stuck to that 4%. This is a fund balance target. You know, there are some years that the board may choose to, you know, go below or above the policy mandate. 4% is what the binding conditions say. So as long as we're expecting to and attempting to exit binding conditions, that's our target. And for 25-26, if we're out of binding conditions, that will be up to your discretion. About 5%, you don't have to discuss and decide that now. Looking ahead, I know I've mentioned it before, 5% is insufficient for a district our size as the fund balance. So we will take some time to rebuild, and we will need some time to rebuild. But at some point, whether that's 27-28 or 30-31, some school year in the future, it's a 10-year project of mine, we'll need to up that rate.
So what's our target, like our ideal target? I know like when we were at WASDA, Bonnie Lake School District was close to binding conditions, and they have now, over the last, was it 6 or 7 years, brought it up to 20% fund balance, was that right?
20%.
I think
That'd
that would
be
be
a lot.
kind of
Yeah,
high.
I think
That
they're
seems
even
kind of
higher.
high,
That,
but
that'd be a lot.
They
So
could have had a 20% with all of the COVID and all of
money,
that.
how
Yeah,
they,
yes.
yeah, because that seemed high to me. So
Yeah.
what's a target, a reasonable, like, we're doing good?
So I think 8% is good, and this is not to do with binding conditions. This, having an 8% fund balance wouldn't have, I mean, it would have made some difference, but it wouldn't make the difference, and that's not the reason I would recommend it to be higher, not because of our binding conditions or our financial trouble, but simply because 5% of our budget is not the same as 5% of Seattle budget or Tacoma's budget. And those larger districts, they get with 5%, and if a sinkhole opens up in the parking lot, they can fix it with 5% of their, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of budget.
Right.
Right, 5% of our $30 million budget may not fix that same sinkhole, but the sinkhole doesn't care.
Well, I think one thing to, as a guideline here is, and we've had experience with doing this. So if you can look back on Ben's records of what the slope of increase when we were increasing our fund balance, that would provide us some experience of, and that rate of increase of the fund balance did not cause any major disruption to our program. So I think that would be a good point of departure.
Yep.
You'd have to, and Ben could probably just tell you what that is like that, so.
Yep, so we can discuss that in the future. But as long, I'm just gonna move forward with the assumption that we're aiming for 4% because that's our binding condition. So unless I'm told otherwise, I'm moving forward at 4%
no,
of expenditures.
But just, my thought is, given all the problems and challenges we had, we should be aiming for a fund balance much higher. Like if I just do 2 months, 2 divided by 12, that's 16.6%. We wanted 2 months of cushion, that's what that would be, right? So.
Yeah, you have to go through a few bargaining sessions to.
Well, I think
I was
given the
gonna say-
challenges we've had, we have
no.
some ammo, right? We gotta hold our ground,
No,
so.
I agree, that we need to be at a reasonably high.
We got in this position from not making good decisions. We now have a chance to make better decisions and have a higher fund balance.
Right. So I actually think, so the fund balance is important, it's one thing, but it's your annual expenditures and revenue versus your revenues that actually make the difference, because a higher fund balance won't help you if you don't match the expenditures and revenues, and that's really the driver there. So that's what, when I talk about financial sustainability, that's what I mean. You know, fund balance is important, and you've got to build that, but it's that balance between.
It's probably an indicator of making good financial decisions.
Yeah.
In part, but I think there is also, and I would love to talk more about, where's the threshold of now the district's sitting on a pot of money and we're not getting it to the students, right? And there's need that maybe could be met and we're sitting on maybe a bigger nest egg than we need to. So I'm not saying, no. And like, yes, wouldn't that be the ideal, that that's our problem, we're sitting on, but, so but, you like, so what is a healthy fund balance? There's probably some.
It's
room
not
for-
less than 1 month.
No, but
So for now, I'll proceed with 4% this year, 5% next year, and in 4 years, we'll talk about.
In fact, I would love to change the metric to number of months of fund balance. I think that would be a better way to look at it.
We'll talk about that in 4 years.
Okay.
Keep it noted though.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Oh, it's
Percentages off.
there, it's on my,
Months.
yep. Okay, so unless there's more
Yeah,
questions.
I think an ultimate goal of 8 or 9% is good.
Yeah.
But it's, to me, it's how many years you take. And then what are and you have to recognize there's ups and downs in economic conditions too, because we've had some bad years from the state where the state pinched us, where we couldn't add to our fund balance then because the state was trying to make up their revenue problems, which they had to make up somewhere. So schools had to give up some of it. So it's, and because the way contracts are bargained over time, we can't adjust as fast as the state budget can adjust for us. So it's, there's so many contingencies that you have to try to piece together to make this work. That you plan for the best you can, and then you work with those contingencies. But I agree with you, you need your goal and you have to know why you're gonna get there, why you want to get there, and how you're gonna get there.
aside from enrollment projection, I mean, is that your main core assumption that you're looking at?
Today,
Okay,
because that will drive the assumptions for revenue, which then we can set a target on fund balance, which is, like I said, moving forward 4%. And then we can start to build our expenditure projections. Yep. First piece is, and
and thank you for being patient with all of
it's okay.
the questions.
I'm happy to do it. Unless there are more, I will adjourn.
The only other question I had was, and this is just kind of follow up from the financial fact-finding work group of the process of continuing to add more to the district website finance tab from that work. Particularly links, I think. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, but to the extent we can add more of that information, I'd like to see that continue.
Okay, yeah, that was a board-driven initiative.
Yeah.
And the board was going to report on that, and I'm happy to put anything on the website that you see fit, but I'm gonna leave that to the board to report on their
Yeah,
initiative.
maybe we can meet and look over what we have and come up with
Sure.
with a listing.
Okay.
If you since you were on the
Sure.
work group, if we can schedule a
Absolutely.
meeting for that.
Okay,
Great. Thanks, Brian.
of course.
Thank you.
So next, Phil, is the superintendent's report.
Yes.
Okay, well, they have talked a lot about what I was gonna talk about. Week 2, school visits. Gotten in all the schools, talked with all the principals, I've gotten their perspective on things, from sitting in their chair. There's some angst around coming up in our budget process, and I've talked with them. They know exactly where we're headed, and so I just want to make sure that you guys know I've had those conversations with them. I've also been in classes, I've observed some teachers, and I am impressed with what I see in the classroom. Students are engaged, they're respectful, things are going on, teaching and learning is happening. So from my perspective of being here now, not quite 2 weeks, there's a lot of good things going on in our schools and our classrooms, and that's our business. We're teaching and learning. Education, our business, and I think business is good right now. in those classrooms, so I want to keep messaging that out. I want to talk a little bit about the professional learning. We talked about that already or earlier, but the integrated writing approach with K-6, the Sherman Alexie, that was the name I was trying to remember. I just couldn't quite get it yet. But he's just a really great author out there. So I think that this is great for our junior high kids to be engaged in. The AI we talked about already, and elementary specialists around mental health first aid, which is kind of a cool topic because we're talking a lot about mental health right now with our kids. Budget, I wanted to mention the OSPI letter that we have. You guys have seen that. From my perspective, that letter outlines why we're in the position that we're in. It talks about declining enrollment. It talks about the COVID dollars. It talks about timber sales and regionalization, all those things that came together, and especially enrollment. That's why we're here. And we're not the only district that's seen these problems. So I love this discussion that we had just now, you had with Brian. Enrollment drives our budget, and we have to come in. I've always budgeted conservatively, working with our demographers and finance guys. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I'd rather add at the other end than take away. So my 2 cents there. Legislative, we're gonna go down. We're gonna go down Sunday. That's at the community college down there. We're gonna hear some of our state leaders, maybe the governor. I don't know if he's on mark there or not, but it'd be interesting to hear what they all have to say about this coming session, the bills that they're working on, some of the things that we want to hear. Has to do with around the prototypical school model. When are you going to fund it? If you're not going to fund it, let's redo it. We're still looking at counseling, nurses, psychs, all those itinerant staff that we all supplement through our levies. So that's the day on the Hill. And then I just confirmed today with James Everett, he's the superintendent in Meridian. Well, we're going to tag on with some of the Whatcom soups and board directors and go down and talk to some local legislators. I've had some conversations already with our legislators emphasizing, okay, we're supplementing transportation $135,000. We're supplementing special ed over $750,000, probably closer to $1 million. These are areas that we need to have addressed at our legislators, with our legislators. They all, and Russ, you've been down there, they all listen to us very carefully and want to support us. And then when it comes down to vote, we see what happens. So those are some of the things. And then we have the levy coming up on the 13th. We have a flyer going out on Monday. I think our citizens committee is doing a fairly good job with getting the message out. I want to thank Tony and Brenna for some of the things that they were doing last week. The word is getting out. We don't have a negative campaign, which is great. So let's see what happens in the next few weeks. But I want to come back to that budget piece, that enrollment piece. It's really important that we get that enrollment closer than, anyway, you hear what I'm talking about. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Questions, comments, concerns?
So how does the decision-making process on what enrollment number to use happen? I'm not clear on that. We've been presented, Brian needs to use a number. He's looking for the board for guidance. What number is he using? We just each give a number, you add it up and divide by 5, and that's our number? Because I have 1448.
Yeah, I'm going to proceed with a cautiously pessimistic estimate, I think, based on a combination of the percent reductions and the cohort model. Because the cohort model is happening whether we project it or not.
Right.
Right, and then we can project percent on top of that. And what I heard from you guys was accurate, but don't go over. And so that's what I'm going to go forward with, but then you will be part of the budget development process as we go forward, so we can look at that again as we go and say, we'd like to go this way or that way. Okay. So there is not a decision that needs to be made right now. I just need a starting place to go forward, and we can adjust from there.
All right.
Sorry, I know I'm back here now, but.
I agree with what he's talking about. You know, we've got lots of different things and iterations, annual FTEs, head counts, those types of things. I think he's got some marching orders right now in terms of, hey, here's where we are, let's look at that number, was it 1448?
Was that, yeah.
Yeah, that 1448 number, let's see where that takes us as we develop the process. Maybe our legislators are gonna vote and give us a little extra here and there. But I think that's a good place to start, my humble opinion.
Yeah, and I think you are gonna be looking at what you said, the program level, so that's very important early on here, and particularly with the secondary. Because what secondary program we offer will differ depending on what our projection for enrollment at secondary level
That's right.
is. So I think that we have to really go into that with our eyes open.
That's right.
So thank you very much. No other questions for Phil? Board discussion, we kind of actually have had our co-curricular discussion. I think the part that we certainly covered the athletic component, and Ed had the question what co-curricular versus extracurricular. So I just wanted to make sure that we all, the wording is on those programs changed decades, a couple of decades, and it's more to reflect the reality that those programs are co-equal with our academic programs in developing the whole child, in developing the kind of characteristics of good citizenship, of teamwork, of pushing oneself beyond what you think you can do. Those are possible more in the co-curricular arena than the academics, and so that's why it's co-curricular. And so I just, I wanted to, and I don't, since we have covered it pretty, time-wise, I just.
Because I gotta go. I have to be at work at 9. I told my employee I would be there to give her some training.
Say something
by 9
nice about drama first.
Drama is really important and we should always have it.
We got plenty.
We got plenty.
Anything else that?
I could talk all night, so I will.
Yeah,
You guys
I
can
didn't
talk all night, but I
anticipate the
gotta
rest
go.
of the meeting taking as long.
Yeah, some kids out there too.
Yeah.
So it's, if that's, we can revisit it also. But I'm glad, thank you, Ed, for getting the ball rolling on connecting with Ron on this, because I think we did a great part of this discussion.
Yeah.
With that, so. Meeting schedule, I think our last meeting, Brenda and Danielle were gonna work on some draft on superintendent evaluation, so
We didn't do it yet.
okay, so if you, let me know if you're able to do that prior to the next meeting.
Yes.
Ideally, enough prior, and then we can have Tammy schedule an executive session for that.
If
So.
you need some help with that, I do have some templates.
Okay,
Cool.
yeah, this is looking backwards.
Yeah.
And our discussion last time was a fairly simple
Yeah.
narrative.
Got some simple.
Yeah, so yeah, if you've got something that you could email to those two, that would help. Okay. And then, so we have school visits, we have February 2nd is our next one, and if, with our approval of the calendar.
What, say that, school improvement website.
Yeah. For the school improvement plan, school visit. So we have our next meeting for that is February 2nd. With this plan now, Nick, do you need to check with the staff and see if February 9th, or should we
If you guys can do Feb 9, we'll go with Feb
Okay.
9 for the
Because
second.
I think, does February 9th work for everyone?
I may have an issue with that date, but I'll check with my wife.
Okay. So I would like to plan on that at this point so that the principals can fix that in their schedule if that's.
That works for me.
Do you have a list of what schools you think that?
Yeah.
I will
Pretty
double
small
check. I
amount.
think I can
Just-
get that.
Just Demi.
I'll have to advertise.
Yeah.
We've got a school board meeting on Feb. 8th,
On the 8th, right.
and that's the next day.
So I don't have anything else. Ed and I can get together with Brian and schedule that separately, so. If I will adjourn the meeting at this point, so you're free to get up there
What
by
a
9
sign.
o'clock if you brought your helicopter with you.
She can wait. She's